World Championship Wrestling. Bringing you great wrestling action. Sanctioned by the NWA, National Wrestling Alliance.
We'll get into that after we get over this NWA thing here.
Which won't take long. As you noted, this is a 1-hour show, and it's not technically the go-home show for the Great American Bash, but the next show they do is the same afternoon as the Great American Bash. So, to a large degree, it was the go-home show. This is the July 2nd, 1988 edition of NWA World Championship Wrestling. So it opens with a clip from an arena show where...
How about a random clip?
Yeah, it's not building to anything at the Bash.
No, Nikita is saving a jobber from Al Perez and his chain.
Well, here's the deal. And
what?
They didn't explain this, but I was able to figure it out. So they're building to a chain match between Nikita and Al.
Okay.
So Al is in a chain match with whoever this poor jobber was.
A jobber?
Al has...
There's a chain match with Al Perez?
Demonstrated chain match.
And a jobber?
Has challenged this jobber to a chain match.
Wow.
So he's got the jobber hung over the ropes. He's choking him to death with a chain. Nikita hits the ring to save this poor man, and then he freezes. For as this man is being choked, as a chain is wrapped around his throat, depriving him of precious oxygen, Nikita must wait for Al to turn around. A minute goes by as this guy's brain cells die off one by one. Gary Hart is screaming at Al to turn around, and finally Al turns around. Nikita lays him out with a sickle, and then we get a race. Because Nikita is frantically trying to get the chain off of the jobber and put it on himself so he can have a chain match with Al. And Gary is trying to get the chain off of Al and get him to safety. And the race is a tie. I guess Al technically wins because Nikita gets that chain on himself, but then Al and Gary scurry to safety of the locker room.
That's a lot of words about a dumb little thing that they did.
It may have been.
This did not light my world on fire.
You don't want to see Nikita versus Al in a chain match now?
Doesn't really do much for me. Al tried to hang that guy, but good.
He did. Just like the Big Boss Man.
Just like the British Bulldog.
Yes, Repo Man did it to Bulldog. That's
yes.
Right. We have a Ric Flair promo to start the show.
I will say that Nikita versus Al Perez is probably going to be better than the British Bulldog versus the Repo Man.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. So we have a Ric Flair promo to open the show. It is 1 week and 1 day to the Great American Bash. And it's every Ric Flair promo you ever saw. So the thing of this show was, in addition to it being 1 hour and almost the go-home show, it was just incredibly rushed. It felt like a 2-hour show squeezed into 1 hour. So Flair had not much you've never heard Ric Flair say before.
I don't know why they didn't just do less squashes then.
I don't either.
Like, do we really need to see every single one of these squashes? Like a Ronnie Garvin squash? What was the point of that even?
I don't know.
Is he even on the Bash?
He's in the Tower of Doom.
He's in the Tower of Doom?
Yeah.
Yeah, he didn't need a squash then.
No. Lex Luger is the greatest physical specimen you've ever seen, but you will never see Ric Flair lose the title in Baltimore. So they go from there to a Barry Windham promo. Now, Barry and Flair are both in the Four Horsemen. They're compadres, but they could not do this promo standing together. They could not just take turns talking. No. Barry has to be 10 feet away at ringside with a different interviewer.
Well, they went to commercial first, and Flair had to get out of town.
All right.
I think so.
It looked like they just cut to a camera 10 feet away. Oh, let's see. So Dylan is there talking. Windham is there talking. He says there's 1 week left in Dusty's career, and then he'll be able to go home and tell his wife that the student taught him a lesson. And JJ says the only lesson Dusty never taught Barry Windham is how to lose, but he didn't need that lesson because he's not a loser.
Vowed to end Dusty's career next week.
Yes.
Don't think that's happening.
Ron Garvin versus Larry Stevens. The only thing of note was Garvin standing on Larry Stevens' throat for a while.
And the only thing of note was Ron Garvin beat the shit out of him.
Well, he always does.
So it's one of those things that helped save what was otherwise a boring show.
Yeah.
Ron Garvin it was glorious destruction of a jobber. I liked it.
As most Ron Garvin squash matches are. He punched him and won. We have a J.J. Dillon, Arn Anderson promo with Tully Blanchard just being there silent. So Dillon is already moving past the Baltimore show. He is moving on to the rest of the Bash tour. Says the Horsemen will be ready for any cage or War Games match they're in. Arn lists all their competition in the Bash: Dr. Death, Sting, Nikita, Dusty, the Road Warriors. It's going to be hard to survive against this competition. And then we've got the Bash coming up with Sting and Nikita Koloff. Sting rose from nowhere, and none of the Horsemen can figure out where he came from.
I can't either.
That's what Arn said. So Nikita has been a killer from day one, But if you check the history books over the last 2 years, we didn't have to be flashy. We just had to be champions.
You know, I forget the promo. Arn got fired the other day, WWE.
Oh, yeah.
And I was looking at some pictures. He's 60 years old now. I was looking at some pictures of Arn. Now that he's 60. Looks fucking exactly like Ole Anderson. They're not related.
Yeah.
Now, granted, they became fake related because they looked like each other.
Sure.
But it is weird that Arn has aged into Ole physically. It's bizarre.
That is strange.
Yeah, it's just weird. That's what I got out of this. And Arn's a great promo.
Arn's a hell of a promo. Sting versus Gary Phelps.
Allow me, Vinny, because I rewound it to make sure that I got all of this. I wrote down every move in this match. If you recall correctly, when I was a young man, Craig and I we'd script out our match move for move. Took Shawn Michaels and Vader and just copied it move for move. Wasn't quite as good, but it was better than half the stuff on WoW. I think I can safely say that. Anyway, if you want to copy this match, everybody, if you're a young grappler out there,
Who in the hell?
maybe the Jungle Boy has a squash match against somebody who wants to be a young Sting.
Okay.
Here's the match. Ready? Body slam. Body slam. That means, by the way, that he body slammed him and lifted him up and then slammed him again.
Right.
Okay. Body slam, elbow, 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 flying elbow, profuse howling, stinger splash, scorpion. That was the entire match.
It was.
Every elbow he dropped, he became more incensed.
Yes.
I don't know why.
It was a half dozen elbows in a row.
Yep.
And the first one, he's a human being, a professional wrestler dropping an elbow on another man. Then he's an angry wrestler dropping an elbow. Then he's a very angry wrestler. Then he's an insane wrestler. Then he's a lunatic. And then he's just, by the end, he's out of his mind.
But you know what I got out of this? Let me recap the match one more time. Slam, slam, elbow, 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 flying elbow, stinger splash, scorpion. He needs to be in every Hall of Fame ever. That's what I concluded. Then he cut this crazy fucking promo.
I love Sting promos.
He says he's going to keep it simple. Then he starts ranting and raving about everybody's haircuts.
So first he says he heard Arn's promo and says, I wonder where I came from myself.
See, I was right.
He's
No
sick.
one knows, even Sting.
I guess not. He is sick of Arn and Tully coming out with the belts every week. Diamonds this, limousines that. Says they're not cool enough for that because they don't have a haircut. Says I've got a haircut. Nikita's got the right haircut. Neither of you has hair on your head.
Yeah, I don't know where he got that.
He's crazy.
I mean,
This man is absolutely out of his mind.
Tully definitely has hair.
Arn has hair.
Arn has most of his
He's
hair.
missing hair, but he has some.
Yeah, it's not all gone yet.
And then he says they'll win the belts in Baltimore. Sting is like the legal definition of insane. He does not have a grasp on reality.
Now, he's pretty
He
weird.
doesn't know what's going on. The price for freedom update in its entirety is get your tickets early.
Yeah, basically.
Al Perez versus George South.
Should know that Jim Ross says that he's never seen anything like the Bash. It is the hottest ticket in sports entertainment. 1988.
Yeah.
1988.
And not Vince McMahon saying it.
Well, he said it during Tuesday Night Titans.
Oh, did he?
So he did precede this,
I see.
but
I'm sure somebody said it in like the
just kind of
60s.
funny that everyone hates that term and it's been around since the early 80s.
Yeah. Al Perez versus George South. Al wins with a spinning toe hold.
To be fair, people hate it because they won't say wrestling.
Yes.
I don't think people had a problem with sports entertainment when they were okay to say the word wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
Now you're prohibited from saying wrestling. You must call yourself a sports entertainer. That's bullshit.
I think it was CM Punk who once said, he was at the commentary desk and said, I can commentate and I can sports entertain. That was funny. So Gary Hart cuts this amazing promo. I can only assume that Gary is either promoting himself or has some kind of financial stake in this Dallas, Texas show coming up. He's got nothing to say about the Bash. He only wants to talk about this show at the Metroplex, the greatest wrestling extravaganza ever in the Metroplex. July 4th in 19,000-seat reunion arena, which he is sure to stress has air conditioning. It'll be 115 degrees outside, but it's going to be so cool for everybody in that building, except you, Nikita. We will make things so hot for you, you will run from the ring in shame.
That's what he said.
He actually says this. When it comes to Texas-style wrestling, aside from Dusty Rhodes, Al Perez does it best.
Yeah, Al Perez.
I'm more impressed that in this promo that has nothing to do with Dusty Rhodes, he still has to put Dusty Rhodes number one.
I like that he accidentally dropped a Kevin Von Erich when he was supposed to say Kevin Sullivan.
Talking
about Reunion Arena.
Whichever
in Dallas.
interviewer asks about the Tower of Doom, he says, Kevin Sullivan.
Kevin Von Sullivan. He's a German now.
He has put this match together. It's the most vicious match Al has ever been in, but we're going to get the job done.
Yeah.
Gary Hart remains awesome.
I can only presume, I might be wrong here. I mean, maybe they were super over as babyface at Reunion Arena, but I just figured that he was a heel that was pretending like he was going to be a babyface because it was his arena, but he's going to show up there and still be booed out of the building and be furious.
I would think so.
Yeah, be my guess.
Gorgeous Jimmy Garvin versus Agent Steel.
This was bizarre.
This was fucking weird. They do a match.
Well, first off, talking about this match, there ain't much to talk about.
No, Jimmy wins the Brainbuster.
But this Brainbuster is one of those moves where it looks so goddamn great in real time. Mm-hmm. He fucking hoists him up and just like all of a sudden just changes direction, drops them on their head, and they die.
Yeah.
Then they show a slow motion replay, and it's as fake as can be.
Yes.
It's like, he's got to have another move that they can show a slow motion replay of. You have to. It's one of those things that WWE does that I actually like. And there's a lot of things that they do that I hate, but it's a production thing I like. WWE would do it where you would see him slowly lift the guy up, and then he'd slowly start to go down, and they'd speed up, bam, and he'd kill the guy.
He'd actually speed it up when he drops.
That's what they do.
Yeah.
It's actually a very cool thing that they do. But anyway, he wins, and then Precious is outside.
Where did Jimmy go?
That's my question. She is being interviewed by David, and Kevin Sullivan just shows up. Now, this one, I'm sure there was no commercial. They went right from the pinfall to Precious being interviewed, and Garvin is nowhere to be seen.
For like 2 months now, this man has been tormenting this family, kidnapped Precious at least once, threatened her many times, threatened Jimmy many times. Now he's out there menacing Precious, and Jimmy's nowhere to be seen?
Yeah.
I don't buy this.
Maybe Garvin does want to know what's in that envelope. Maybe he's curious.
I suppose.
Gave the guy a little time, then things got a little bit tense.
Oh, they did.
He came out to save his woman. Kevin vows, you'll get it in Baltimore. She's asking him, what do I have to give you to get it?
Yeah, she asks, why are you doing this to me? He says, because you humiliated me on TV and called me a liar. He says, he's got his note. His piece of paper says, I still believe what's on here. She says, I think I know what that is and I want it. And she's going to get it in Baltimore. And eventually, Jimmy came out and just grabbed her by the wrist and led her away. So on top of all this...
I guess the story would have been that they were brother and sister, but she didn't really know for sure.
I guess?
This must have been like some sort of test to determine that they were related.
Paternity test or something?
Well, not paternity. They're brother and sister.
Whatever you would call it.
He wouldn't be her father. So a paternity test is.
Okay.
A DNA test?
I suppose.
Did they have that back in 1988?
All I know is, on top of how weird and illogical all of this was, the result was we got Precious talking and Jimmy Garvin not talking. And that's a mistake. Mike Rotunda versus Tony Suber in a World Television Championship match. They were sure to stress the title is on the line. So Rotunda beats him up for a while. He throws him outside where the Varsity Club attacks Suber with a jump rope. A weapon I've not seen used in a pro wrestling beating maybe before or since. But they use this, they tie his arms behind his back and they're punching him. Then they throw him in the ring. The jump rope is still tied up all around his arms and behind his back still. The match just keeps going. Rotunda hits a butterfly suplex and wins, and they are sure to say that, as expected, he is still the television champion.
All right. It's from the Smithsonian, which is it says, credible as anything. Smithsonian.
A reliable source.
2013 was the 25th anniversary of the first use of DNA evidence to convict a killer. That would have been 1988.
About then, yeah.
Yes, 1988, July of 1988. So, seeing as to how Kevin Sullivan's angles all had to do with things that were in the news, that probably is what happened right here. He probably read about some DNA testing and came up with a storyline that would have revealed that he underwent this testing and discovered that she was, in fact, his sister. There you go. I'll ask him next time I see him.
Next time you're on a plane together?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It could be this year.
So, it could be. So, we have seen Ric Flair cut a promo. The two big matches for the Bash, Did you review the Mike Rotundo match?
I did. Did you mention that during this match, Rotundo is jump roping, Steiner gets a jump rope, ties up Suber, and is beating the shit out of him?
I talked about it in detail.
Okay. Did you mention the referee's looking right at him and doesn't do a goddamn thing?
I didn't mention that part.
Okay. The referee's looking right at them and doesn't do a goddamn thing. The referee then drags Suber into the ring. He's tied up in a jump rope.
That part I mentioned.
Rotundo's beating the shit out of him as he's tied up in this jump rope. Teddy Long finally gets the poor fucking guy untied. And do you know what he did afterwards? He gave the jump rope back to Steiner.
Well,
this motherfucker ran SmackDown.
yeah.
Dude, that's the worst fucking refereeing I've ever seen in my life. They tried to fucking kill that guy with a foreign fucking object. He did not call for a DQ. He just untied the fucking guy and gave the gimmick back to the guy that wrapped him up in the first place.
Would you keep Rick Steiner's property away from him?
Fuck, I'd call for a DQ and run for my life. This was stupid. I know you didn't mention that.
I did not mention that. So we saw Flair cut a promo already. We saw
also, in the Bash preview, they called it the first ever Tower of Doom match. Bullshit.
That is a lie.
China.
Yeah, the one in China, yes.
Yes.
But even not counting that, I believe the World Class had done a Triple Cage match before this.
Well, yes.
Pretty sure they had. So, as I was saying, the two big matches at the Bash are Lex Luger versus Ric Flair and Dusty Rhodes versus Barry Windham, and then maybe the Tower of Doom match as the third. So, we've already seen Ric Flair cut a promo. It was great. We saw Barry Windham cut a promo. It was great. Now we see Dusty and Lex come out together. And Dusty cuts a promo, and it's great. He's tired of talking about all this. The U.S. title, he says, belongs to him. And when you take something that belongs to him, you got to pay the price. Now, I don't know why it belongs to him. I don't know the last time he had this belt. I think as long as we've been watching, he never had it. It's changed hands 4 or 5 times. Barry Windham won a tournament for it. Why it's Dusty's, I don't know.
Well, what I want to know is why you're bearing the lead.
All right.
Dusty comes out, he is booed out of the fucking building. Luger comes out, he is booed out of the fucking building.
I did that.
The fans are chanting for Barry the whole time. And it was really funny because this is not the first time this has happened in the studio. The live studio audience hates Dusty, and they, well, I guess it depends on the day. Sometimes they like Luger, sometimes they hate him. But when they go to a live event, whenever we see footage from a live event, he is like a god. It's crazy. He's like Roman Reigns.
Sort of.
Yeah.
So, Dusty cuts a promo on behalf of Lex. He's running down Ric Flair. Lex Luger's your next heavyweight champion. So now it's Lex's turn. Lex is the challenger in the main event. This is his, and this is his chance to get the ball and run with it. And boy, was he stuck in the shadow of Flair and Windham, and especially standing right next to him, Dusty Rhodes.
Classic Luger promo. He just talked.
It wasn't terrible.
Made his point, and he just kept talking.
He's just a guy.
Just talked
Just a
forever.
guy with nice hair and pecs. He's going to win the title. There's not going to be a 6th reign, and that's it. And boy, he came off as just a guy. The Fantastics versus Mike Jackson and Curtis Thompson.
You know who's not just a guy?
Mike Jackson.
He was the best worker on this show.
One of the highlights of the show was Mike Jackson just schooling Bobby Fulton.
Oh, my God.
It was awesome. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Didn't last long. The Fantastics took over, and eventually they pinned Thompson with a rocket launcher.
Allow me to talk a little bit about this next segment, Vinny. This show was boring, so I was doing other stuff. Cornette talks about the straitjacket stip. He's being an idiot. Usual Jim Cornette. And then he pulls out the Weekly World News.
Several of them.
I loved the the fucking Weekly World News. When I was a kid, my family bought it every week, and we howled. Weekly World News apparently went out of business in 2007. You aware of that?
That was 12 years, then we have no updates on Batboy.
No, incorrect.
Oh.
Someone else bought it and took it online. There's now an online Weekly World News. So I went up there and I looked at it. Now, God bless the new Weekly World News. It fucking sucks. Okay? I have here, everyone, from books.google.com, a classic edition of the Weekly World News. I believe from 1994. Look at some of these great stories here. The world's first surgical exorcism. This doctor cut a man's head open and removed a demon.
That's a good doctor.
And actually a wiggling demon. Physical.
Was it Norman Smiley's demon?
Let me read it, Vinny. I want you to listen carefully, okay? Because this is how this used to be written. Then I'm going to read how it's written nowadays, okay? The world's first surgical exorcism. Brain doc cuts man's head open and removes a demon. From Vienna, Austria. A brilliant doctor has stunned the world by doing the first ever surgical exorcism. It's in quotation marks. An operation in which a demon was surgically removed from a man's head. Brain surgeon Klaus Riedler says he consulted priests, demonologists, and Bible experts before extracting an evil spirit from the left temporal lobe of factory worker Franz Bauer's brain. I've always believed that medicine and religion should work together, Dr. Riedler said. But people in my profession don't understand demonic possession. Surgery has never been used to remove an unclean spirit. Mr. Bauer was clearly possessed. Neither his doctors nor the church could help him. It was up to me to stop his headaches and violent behavior. So Dr. Riedler combined his surgical skills with his painstaking research in exorcism. He opened Bauer's skull and pulled out a vicious, wriggling demon. It was terrifying, says attending nurse Monica Luthi. That's the old Weekly World News.
Gotcha.
You want to hear a modern version?
I do.
All right. Yowie spotted in London. A yowie, a big hairy beast, has been spotted roaming the streets of London. The latest sightings took place just north of Camden Town in London. Hundreds of witnesses have seen the beast strolling around London. One resident saw the creature jumping a barbed wire paddock fence before briefly pausing at the end of a road. The yowie raised his arm to apparently shield its eyes from the bright, high-beam glare of the approaching car. This is shit. Who wrote that shit? I'll tell you his name.
It may have been a yowie.
Actually, I don't have it right here. But man, that just made me sad. The old Weekly World News, they would write their stories, not all of them, like, wriggling demon pulled out of a guy's head. A little hard to believe. But you could read the old Weekly World News, and maybe like 30% of them you'd go, that could be true. You know what I'm saying?
They had credibility.
Yeah, a little bit here.
A willing suspension of disbelief.
Yeah, organ donor's wife wants his hearts, lungs, and liver back so he can go to heaven whole. I can believe that. Right?
Sure.
You can believe somebody would do something like that. Scientists find 10,000-year-old lottery ticket. Hey, you read stuff about that every now and then. You know what I'm saying?
Was it unscratched?
Well, it didn't say that. But anyway, the point of it was, like, the old Weekly World News was like a lot of fun. It was like pro wrestling. Like, you knew it was bullshit, but every now and then there was something that made you think, that one might be real. This new Weekly World News? It's lame. One stupid story after another.
Here's a story on the yowie from AustralianBeasts.com. The yowie, Australia's Latin-speaking Bigfoot.
I didn't know it spoke Latin.
What?
Is that in Weekly World News or is that somewhere else?
That's AustralianBeasts.com.
Wow, I did not know that.
Generally classed as a not-so-distant relative of the Yeti, Bigfoot, Sasquatch, and the Abominable Snowman, the yowie is a creature that continues to be sighted throughout Australia.
Really?
But what does it really look like? Where is the best place to find it? And is there a government conspiracy to cover up its existence?
That's a damn good question. Then they always had, like, Dear Dottie.
And we got YouTube.
Remember that?
Kind of.
Oh, man. People would ask her some questions. She'd bury them. It was awesome. All right, let's move on here. I can't find the other story I wanted to read, which was about being a He-Man. Wanted to read it to you, Vinny. Go ahead.
Well, the reason this whole Weekly World News tangent came up, Cornette had a stack of them. He demonstrates some of their headlines. They involved aliens and Elvis and that sort of thing. Then he turns to page whatever as a poll the Weekly World News apparently conducted.
I find that hard to believe.
I actually don't. I can actually imagine... Dude, I'm sure there's a huge crossover between people who worked on the Weekly World News and pro wrestling fans. So some guy had to fill the 23rd page of Weekly World News. I'm sure they said, just put something in there. We don't care. Just put it in there. And so he conducted a poll. The people of Butte, Montana, allegedly, 95% of the people in Butte, Montana, did not want to see Jim Cornette in a straitjacket. 2% did, and 3% were not available for comment.
Okay, let me just read a couple of these to you, Vinny. I should read these to Bridget, perhaps. Here are some suggestions from experts on how to turn those modern-day marshmallows into old-fashioned macho men. This is 1991, okay? Sensitive guys have cowardly eyeballs that flinch when looking straight into the eyes of another. If your mate has this problem, don't despair. Dr. Steve Duck, a psychology expert, says wimps can be taught to have the steely gaze of a macho man. He advises gals to tell their guys to practice looking into the eyes when talking to others. Great advice.
That's his plan?
Yeah. Sensitive men are usually good listeners, but Dr. Duck says he-men dominate conversations. The more powerful person talks more, said Dr. Duck. He interrupts constantly.
So basically what you found here is a how-to guide for the toxic masculinity. The masculinist? That'd be it?
I'm done. Go ahead.
Cornette rants and raves for a while, and Bobby Stan are trying very hard to not laugh at him being an idiot. The Rock and Roll Express versus Joe Cruz and Bob Riddle. First of all, I know it's the network, and they had to find... I know it's the network, and they can't play whatever copyrighted music the Rock and Roll Express had. But they couldn't find generic rock and roll. There was like synth pop playing. As these
I
guys
liked
coming
it.
out.
I'm a sensitive man. I kind of like that song.
So Bob Riddle starts, and we've seen Bob Riddle before. He's never been any good, but he's never been this bad. He is an absolute sack of shit. He's deadweighting Ricky Morton on everything. Won't go up for a damn thing.
Is this that one fucking guy, or is he later?
Oh, he's later.
Okay.
That one fucking guy was coming up soon.
Okay.
So Joe Cruz tags in, and Joe Cruz is the guy who looks like Magnum TA. And compared to Bob Riddle, he actually looked like Magnum TA. They pinned him with a double dropkick.
Okay, I'm just going to read one more, okay? Wimps also have a tendency to slouch and try to look as small as possible. He should try to take up more space, says Dr. Duck. More space means more power. Wives should tell their husbands to stand very erect with their feet farther apart in a broad, space-commanding stance. Would you like to demonstrate, Vinny? I'm shutting this window. Otherwise, go on.
So the Rock and Roll Express cut a promo. Gibson says they can beat anybody, and they want the tag titles for the 5th time. And as always, Gibson has a line or two, and it's lame, and then Ricky Morton is awesome. He says, we're back for a lot of reasons.
Take up space.
Doesn't say what those reasons are, but he repeats they want the tag titles. So they finish, and as they're walking away, here is David Crockett's tagline to wrap up this segment.
Yep.
The Great American Bash is coming your way, so watch it.
Yeah. 9 million people, baby.
That's a tagline. So watch it. Ivan Koloff and the Russian Assassin versus Larry Davis and Keith Steinborn. I've decided I need to make a comeback.
For the Russians' music?
So I can do a Russian gimmick and use this Russian music.
It was awesome.
It's awesome. They beat up these guys for a while. Paul Jones is on commentary. Even he is boring this week. He has nothing to say.
That's just boring.
The Assassin wins with the Russian guillotine, which, if you have forgotten, is a Cobra Clutch. Have a Road Warriors promo. They admit that, yes, the Russian Assassin is bigger than them, but so what? Does he have the hatred that we do? Say, we even hate a lot of Americans, and we especially hate Ivan Koloff and the Assassin. And that was interesting, because they're, spoiler alert, they're not They're heels by the end of the year. As the first, maybe in the first little tease. They promised to kick people's teeth down their throats in Baltimore. Then Hawk talks about the two of them were beating up the other kids in St. Paul's Reformatory. They were told, if you like beating people up this much, you should be pro wrestlers. And they did. And it's a fact, he says, because he said so. Helling says Kevin Sullivan is a sick man who devised a sick match, but there's one thing sicker, and that's the Legion of Doom.
I was having way more fun reading these Weekly World News stories.
All right, we'll stop our...
I shut it down. It's too late. But these are just a boring show.
You don't have a history tab in your browser?
Dr. Death beat Ryan Wagner. Boring. Dr. Death cuts a promo, actually, which was great by his own standards.
It was one of his best promos.
Yeah, he's got another poll. It's not the Weekly World News. It's AP UPI poll.
It's a football reference, Brian.
Well, there is an AP and a UPI, Vinny. I was just pointing out that he had a poll here.
Yeah.
It was not the fucking Weekly World News.
I see.
And, yeah.
Yes, Luger, Rhodes, and Flair are all on top of the poll somehow.
Yeah.
Says Barry is a student. He will take the dream back to school. Promises there will be a lot of beef in the Tower of Doom. Says the guys in the other team will have to look into our eyes and watch very closely, he says, because hell is going to break out.
And finally, the main event of the show.
Dude. Did we determine for sure which one this guy was?
I'm 99% sure it's Danny Little.
The Sheep Herders versus JC Wild, and the worst looking professional wrestler I have ever seen.
Think about that.
Including myself.
Dude.
On my worst day.
You are the He-Man that was talked about in Weekly World News. This guy needed to read every single one of those. His wife needed to tell him he took up no space.
Actually, he took him a lot, but it was all...
He looked nobody in the fucking eye.
That's true.
He interrupted no one.
Danny Little was the before picture, and I was the after.
Fuck, this dude, I swear to God. We're sitting here, and I just fucking flipped my shit. And you thought something went wrong.
I'm looking at my screen because the sheep herders are on the screen. They're doing the worst hockey you've ever seen. So I'm looking down at my screen doing whatever, and I hear you just shout, "Oh my God!" And I look up, and you've got your phone in your hand, and I figured someone must have died. But then you realize
a little part of me died.
You're not looking at your phone, you're looking at the screen. And I turned to look at the screen and said, "Oh my God!"
Dude, we have seen the most horrendous jobbers on this show.
On this show, on the indies.
Yep.
In tryouts, in auditions, I have never seen a pro wrestler who looked as bad as, I believe, Danny Little.
Please give the date of the show again.
That would be July 2nd, 1988.
Okay, here's the key, everybody. We've said before how pale people are. This was the palest man I've ever seen.
Yeah.
We have talked before about how horrible some of these haircuts are.
Yeah.
This was the most horrible haircut I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And we have talked about appalling physiques before. This was the most appalling physique. He wasn't fat. He wasn't skinny, but he was both.
He was skinny fat.
And I mean, no one's been skinny fat ever like Danny Little.
He was the skinny fattest guy you ever saw.
He was the skinny fattiest guy in the history of this world. And he fucking was terrible.
He did legit, as you were talking about in the He-Man story, he had terrible posture. He slouched standing there. Did we talk about his gear?
Where's Dr. Duck?
So he's sitting there.
It's just...
Then there's he's got cottage cheese thighs and color and consistency. And he's just got flab everywhere. Do we mention he's a satchel ass?
Excuse me, consistency?
Yes.
Do you have a taste?
No.
What the fuck are you talking about?
It's lumpy.
Okay.
They're lumpy and white,
Fine.
is what I meant.
All right.
So, you
said it.
So he's a complete satchel ass. His ass is way wider than his shoulders.
I'm not sure he had shoulders.
Flabby, and he's pale. And
I think his arms came out of his
slouching.
neck.
And he's got this hair.
Hideous.
And he's got a singlet that's like 4 sizes too big.
Do you remember when Shawn Michaels came back with his haircut and it looked bad on Shawn Michaels? It's like, it's got to be a shitty haircut to look bad on Shawn. And then this fucking guy had it.
I guess?
A page boy, they call it.
Oh.
Horrific.
I actually had that for a while too. It was bad. So this singlet's just hanging loose on his skin, which is hanging loose on his fat, which is hanging loose off his bones. He's just repulsive.
You know what's sad? I didn't see enough of him. He's got to be back next week.
So then the match actually does begin, and if you told me this is his first match, I would believe you. He looks horrible. The only positive in all of this is that at least his singlet, while it was too big, it was so big that it did in fact cover his breasts,
It stayed on.
which separates him from many jobbers in the show with
Yes.
man boobs.
Yes.
So he sucks. The Sheepherders get him out of there immediately. They fight the other dude. They pin him with a gutbuster. Danny Little, you are, without question,
Without question.
the worst wrestler of all time of the week.
Of the lifetime.
And the worst looking professional wrestler I've ever seen.
Oh, my God.
So the Sheepherders do a promo. Dude, I forgot about this. So it's a Sheepherders
Oh, my
promo.
God. So did I.
It's
Fuck.
a Sheepherders promo.
This is the main event, the go-home show for the Great American Bash. Let's see what they said.
They're screaming and they're ranting and raving. The USA and Bloody Yanks and the Rock and Roll Express. And then they say, the Rock and Roll Express, we know that you are heroes. And we know the old women will be cheering for you. And we know the young girls will be screaming for you. And we know the old men will be screaming for you. And the young boys will be screaming for you. And we're going to get you at the Great International Bash.
No, Vinny, you fucked the whole thing
I
up.
probably did.
Yes. He says, everyone is screaming for you, including the young boys. And that tells you something right there, David Crockett. That was his fucking line.
That's the part I missed. That's key.
You don't fucking say. And that tells you something right there, David Crockett, that the young boys are screaming for the Rock and Roll Express.
Well, that's where there's two of us doing
And
the show.
that's how the show ended, on that fucking line.
Yeah.
Dude! 1988. Thank God it's over. Thank God the 80s are over. Thank God the 90s are over. Thank God the 2000s are almost over. 2010s are almost over. Jesus, God, I'm old. Fuck. I like to think that from 2000 to 2019 is just one decade. I like to think.
You suck at math.
No, I like to think. There was the 80s, the 90s, and then from 2000 till today. It's just one decade. I'm not that old.
At the one and only. Woo!
Based on these three matches, a bad pay-per-view.
This was, well, we'll get into it. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. We got to promote it first. We got to promote the shit out of this show.
I will feel guilty about promoting this. NWA World Championship Wrestling from July 9th, 1988. We open with clips of the Road Warriors squashing jobbers.
I hate to cut you off. Before that, they're still promoting this show as the most watched wrestling event in history.
Yes.
They point out there's 9 million homes with the capability to buy this show. Ric Flair, by the way, said 10.
So did Dylan, yes.
So they're exaggerating. And they're basically, as J.J. Dillon explained, 10 million homes could potentially buy this show. And each home will have 3 to 4 people
Yes.
per home watching. It will be the most watched wrestling show of all time. So basically, if every single home that had the capability for pay-per-view, whether you're a wrestling fan or not, you're buying the show, according to them.
Yeah.
And you're having 4 friends over. Okay. If they did this, they would break the record that WWE set with Main Event.
All right.
33 million viewers.
Yeah.
Okay, but literally every single fucking person that has pay-per-view would have to buy the show and have 3 to 4 people in the house. That didn't happen. What would you guess the number of purchases of this show were, Vinny?
Right around 1 million, I would say. No, I think that's generous. 700,000.
I almost fell off my chair when you said 1 million.
Yeah. Well, I don't know.
Try about 180,000.
Yeah.
180,000 people bought this show. You know what's funny about that? You know how many people bought the Bunkhouse Stampede
I
in
have no
January?
idea. Not a clue.
280,000.
So it went down.
They
well,
actually
that makes
did
sense.
almost 100,000 fewer buys for this show than for the Bunkhouse fucking Stampede show.
That makes a little bit of sense because that show was also a disaster. That's people who did buy that may not have wanted to be burned twice.
Well, hey, they fucking were burned again. Mm-hmm. So anyway, long story short, everybody, as you listen to this and they continually promote this as the most watched pay-per-view of all time, it did a shitty number. But it did sell out.
It was sold out live.
It was sold out.
Crowd was hot.
And they were hot, and boy, were they hot at the end.
They were really hot when all was said and done. So then, We get clips of the Road Warriors squashing, I believe, Big Bear Collie and Curtis Thompson. And they hit the Doomsday Device, and David Crockett just squeals with delight. He loves it when good guys murder people.
Yeah, David Crockett's getting in the way of this sale to Turner, by the way. He doesn't want to sell.
Oh, you don't say?
David Crockett.
Yes.
He lost out in the end.
Good to hear. So the Bash is in fact tomorrow night. It is sold out, but they are sure to mention for the first of 27 times, it will be the most watched wrestling event in history, and you can be a part of it via the magic of pay-per-view.
Yes.
Which they explained from the ground up about 6 times.
Well, it was new. So
it was new, but it wasn't brand new.
It was fairly new. Yeah. It was fairly new. Because before that, like a lot of the WrestleMania 1 and everything like that, I mean, that was all closed circuit.
Closed circuit, yes.
Yeah, it wasn't, like Mania 3 was pay-per-view.
Right.
And this was a year later.
Yeah, but it was also 6 months, not even 6 months, a few months. That was 6 months after Bunkhouse Stampede.
Sure.
So maybe they figured nobody bought it because they didn't know what pay-per-view was.
Hey, and there's 9 million homes now.
All right.
They're new homes. Have to learn how to use this pay-per-view.
So they say this most watched wrestling event in history will include the Tower of Doom, and they bring in the Road Warriors for a promo, including Road Warrior Animals Mohawk. He's 6'8" now. It's amazing his haircut here.
It's a pretty good promo by these guys. Even Hawk was like
Hawk had a point, and
serious.
It was not. Yeah, he was not goofy. They're happy to help Jimmy Garvin kick Kevin Sullivan's butt. They think Sullivan's dumber than a bag of hammers. It'll be the Garvins, LOD, and Dr. Death. They never mentioned the other team, and I went through here trying to figure out who it was.
I was going to ask you at the end if you could have named the teams in the Tower of Doom.
When the Tower of Doom began, I was still unclear who was in it.
Yeah, everyone came out, but there were more people than were going to be in the match.
Yes.
I still don't know who was in it. We're going to have to go back and watch again.
No.
Well, I'll recap.
By the end, I figured it out. But
okay. Well, I got to figure out who wasn't in it that came out.
Well, it was Rick Steiner. Rick Steiner was not in it, but he did come out.
Okay, I got it.
Yeah. So they plug their Tower of Doom match and then add at the end they're going to watch a fellow Chicagoan win the world title when Lex Luger beats Ric Flair. Brad Armstrong versus Mike Jackson.
Hey, finally a good Brad Armstrong
I would
match.
have a much higher opinion of Brad Armstrong on this show if he wrestled Mike Jackson every week.
Yeah.
But that's probably true of everybody. If they wrestled Mike Jackson every week, they look a lot better. Brad did an armbar suplex in this match, which I don't think I've ever seen before. Just got him a standing armbar like every pro wrestler's ever done. Next thing you know, he's herking him backwards over his head. It was really cool.
Hey, listen. As far as I know, the man accepting the open challenge over WrestleMania weekend for the ICWA Texarkana television title is not Mike Jackson. But if it is,
cool.
There's going to be a new champion. I'll just tell you right now.
You will lay down for him.
I'll lay down for this fucking guy.
Mike Jackson rules. They had a fun, short, competitive match, and Armstrong won with a leg sweep out of nowhere.
I liked it.
Yes. Lex Luger comes out for a promo to Hardy Boos.
Well, it was that pink shirt, I think, had something
The pink
to do
shirt
with
where they could see the future, and they saw the match. So Lex immediately yanked the pink shirt off. Said Flair has to face him. There will be no stopping him. The whole world will be watching. Everyone knows, he says, something big's going to happen.
He was right about that.
This was a very average promo.
Yeah.
Rock and Roll Express versus Gary Phelps and Gary Royal. First of all, I'm not sure which Gary was which, but whichever Gary was in there first, he could move for a tubby guy. Very impressive jobber. So they advertise that if you can't get a ticket to the show, and you don't want to buy the pay-per-view, you don't want to buy the Bash on pay-per-view, you can pick up your telephone. In 1988, your corded telephone, and dial a 900 number.
Thank God it was corded. Better sound quality.
That's probably true. Dial a 900 number and get play-by-play of the Great American Bash on your phone for 3 hours.
You know, as a man who had a 900 line, when I first heard this, I thought, holy God almighty, that's going to be the most expensive phone call in history. But I thought about it, and I'm not saying it would be cheap, because it wouldn't be, but $1.99 for the first minute, 99 cents for each additional minute, almost $200 to listen to the whole show. But not in the thousands like I initially thought when I heard. You're going to listen to a 3-hour fucking pay-per-view on a 900 line? Are you crazy? That's still pretty expensive.
That's very expensive.
That's not
the actual pay-per-view was like $60.
That's not... Oh, 60?
What was it? I don't know.
Dude, it's probably like $19.99.
All right, there you go.
Back in the 80s.
So it's only 10 times as much to not get the video.
I was just going to say, you got to have no friends to listen to this thing for $200. I mean, literally, if you had a friend in fucking Maine and you lived in Seattle, you probably could fucking fly there and back.
Yes.
For cheaper than listening to it on the fucking telephone.
Even if you are a blind person,
Yes.
just buy the video pay-per-view
And listen.
and listen. They'll tell you what's going on.
Yeah.
You mean to get all the detail you get over the phone. So they pin the crappier Gary with a double drop kick. So they go to do a promo afterwards. And we've seen 200 Rock and Roll Express promos. They all go the same way. Robert Gibson goes first, and he's horrible. But Ricky Morton lets him finish and then takes over. This time, Robert Gibson was so horrible, Ricky didn't even let him finish. Robert starts, he goes off about the tag match of the pay-per-view. He can't remember who's in it. Sting and the other guy, I think he said. And Ricky just says, "That's all about this." And he takes over and saves the day. He calls out Tully and Arn, or whoever wins that tag match, says they'll walk over the Sheepherders or anyone else to get to the top. And he has a good close and then storms off. He must have gotten so tired of working for two men for years. Or talking for two men for years.
I can't help but notice that the Rock and Rolls keep telling us how the only place you could wrestle, or you should wrestle, is the NWA. It's the best in the world. Where were they for that 6 months?
The last 6 months?
It was like AWA.
And where do they go the rest of the year?
They were somewhere where it must have sucked. That's all I got to say.
I believe it was Memphis.
They are
if I'm not
kissing
mistaken.
ass as they get back here.
That is true. So Sting versus Larry Stevens. Sting wins. Nothing to say about it. And they go to break, and I was so sad because I thought we'd at least get a crazy Sting promo. And then Sting was there to talk after the break, and boy, did he cut a crazy Sting promo. Started talking about his childhood, when his dad pulled him aside and said, "Stinger?" Because that's his real name, apparently. He was a 6-year-old named Stinger. His dad said, "As long as you fight for the forces of good and believe in yourself and always fight for that good side, you'll always come out as a winner." Well, that's hogwash. The only way to beat Arn Tully is to do some serious butt kicking. And that's what's going to happen at the Great American Bash. And he looks at David Crockett and says, "Bye!" And he walks away.
Yeah.
I love crazy Sting promos.
Hey, I was right. They were in the AWA.
All right, okay.
Feuding with Sean and Marty.
Well, there you go, yes.
No fucking wonder they wanted out. I mean, they were great wrestlers, but they had some other problems.
He had other problems, and
They weren't in the ring.
there's probably more money to be made elsewhere than the AWA in 1988. Okay. The only thing anyone will want to listen to the show for.
He's back, baby.
Midnight Express versus Ryan Wagner and the worst wrestler of all time, of the week, of all time, Danny
Our boy,
Little.
Danny Little.
We said last week he was the worst looking pro wrestler I'd ever seen. Came back this week. So a couple notes. Some people have looked at gifs or pictures of this man and said, "You know, Vinny, the guy kind of looks like you."
Well,
I took a second look at him, and you know what? When in my very, very first match,
yes.
the Stoney Edwards match and the three-way with Sonny O'Mara and Moose, not that Moose,
Different moose.
different Moose, I did in fact have this haircut.
And actually kind of the same gear. Sort of.
It was better.
Yeah, but it was a blue singlet.
It was
Very ironic.
The first one I had was actually like just a black T-shirt tucked into pants,
Yeah, okay.
which were blue.
Okay.
Which were blue. Much like Danny Little's blue. It's not a singlet. It's a blue
Yes.
tank top tucked into trunks.
We thought it was a singlet.
Yeah.
And then you said, there's a fucking hole in his
First,
gear.
I thought he had a hole in his gear.
And I thought, there's no way that Danny Little has been booked enough to have a hole in his fucking gear. That's impossible, okay? Then I noticed that there was a matching hole on each side. And I was like, is that a fucking vent? But it turned out he had his shirt tucked into his pants.
So I can only assume that he showed up to wrestle. He somehow got booked. He showed up with his gear, and they took one look at him and they said, "Put a shirt on and tuck it in."
Yeah.
And he did his best.
Now listen, I got a few things myself. First off, as much as we buried this guy last week, And as much as we're going to bury him this week, okay? It was weird. Because at the end of the show, there's another jobber. What was his name?
Well, we'll get to him.
Let me find him. It was J.C. Wild. Okay? We'll talk more about him later. But the point was, during that match, there was a moment where I thought, he's worse than Danny Little. But then I realized he's actually got a physique. So Danny Little is still the champ. Okay? But he was so bad. J.C. Wild was so wretched that there was a part of me that gained some respect for Danny Little.
How dare you?
I'm
actually insulted you said that.
He was better than J.C. Wild. And you know what? Here's another thing about him. He came back after last week. He didn't quit. He didn't give up, Vinny.
There's two sides to that coin.
He kept...
You can admire his persistence.
Yes. I admired his persistence. Now, with that said...
The flip side of that is, he should be smart enough to know he's no good at this.
If you think we were being mean to this guy, okay, all we did was verbally bury him. We weren't the Midnight Express, who physically on national television alerted you, the viewer, that they hated this man's guts. They had no fucking respect for him. They even gave Ryan Wagner, his partner, some moves.
Yeah.
Ryan Wagner did some stuff to the Midnight Express. They gave Danny Little nothing.
So we watched him last week, and all I remember is his appearance. I remember burying his work.
Oh, I remember his work.
But I don't remember the work itself.
Horrible.
Well, he was 1,000 times worse this week.
No, he was just as bad.
Dude.
This is how bad he was last week, Vinny.
So, Stan, he gets thrown outside, first of all. And Stan goes over to interfere, and then he looks at him and holds up his hands like he doesn't even want to touch him.
Yes.
And just walks away.
Yes, I'm not putting a hand on this man.
So, Danny Little goes to climb back into the ring. Bobby sticks his leg through the ropes. Bobby Eaton was a great worker. Bobby Eaton never hurt anybody. But Bobby Eaton kicked Danny Little right in the fucking head. Because he hates him. He's an embarrassment to Bobby Eaton. He's an embarrassment to this business. Booted him right in the head of national TV.
Something must have happened in the back.
They probably watched his last match.
Maybe they rode together and Danny Little asked, where do they work 6 days a week? At that point, they were like, we're killing this motherfucker.
That's possible. I hadn't thought of that.
That's my first thought.
So, Bobby Eaton now has a change of heart. He goes to hold the ropes open for Danny Little. Danny Little does not know how to climb into the ring.
Well, I'm sure he climbed into the ring many times, but no one had ever held the ropes open for him, and so it was a new experience.
I could take any fan, and if they're standing at the ringside, and I go stand in the ring and pull up on the bottom rope, that fan will say, I should roll in under this bottom rope. Danny Little tried to climb over the rope that Bobby Eaton was pulling up. In Danny Little's mind, he didn't take this as an invitation into the ring. He took it as a challenge, an obstacle to overcome to fight to get into this ring. Ryan Wagner came in. He looked like Buddy Landell next to this man.
Looked like Ric Flair.
Cornette's plugging a Detroit card, including The Sheik.
Yeah.
It's always so weird on these shows because they will plug the show. They will plug the shows that their guys are on, but they're not necessarily promoting. Like a Detroit card featuring The Sheik.
Please allow me to discuss the finish.
Okay.
Little tags back in. They destroy him. They slam him. And
Sorta.
He lays
They
on the
try
mat.
to.
Like, he lays on the mat, and he's just prone. His arms are straight out. His legs are straight out. It's like he's in a coffin, okay? He's not protecting his ribs, all right? He's not laying like somebody that got knocked down. It's just, I need to lay down now. I'm going to put my feet together and my hands by my sides. I'm going to lay there. Fucking Eaton goes up top, and he does the rocket launcher. He splashes a guy. He lands the splash. He does not get the pin. He stands up. He looks down at his tights. He realizes they were on him. Mm-hmm. He wipes the Danny Little off his tights.
Yes.
And he takes his tiniest finger.
His pinky.
And he puts it on top of Danny Little. Just the fingernail. The referee counts to pin. Cornette says, and I quote, "One finger on that idiot. He's pear-shaped. Or he was. Now he's flat as a pancake." This was the most amazing 5 minutes of my life.
Cornette, first he said Danny Little is pear-shaped, which he certainly is. Then he went as far as to call him the human pear.
The human pear.
Which is the best nickname for this guy I've ever heard.
It's kind of funny because he looked like a pear and an apple at the same time. You know what I mean?
He don't look like an apple.
No, he was pear-shaped, but his ass looked like an apple.
Oh, the ass itself?
Yeah, it was horrifying.
I think apple bottom is a compliment. This whole song's about that.
No. Not like this. Not like this.
Whew. All right, so Cornette is plugging the Great American
If you saw
Bash.
a woman whose ass actually looked like an apple, okay, that's not a compliment. They use the term apple bottom, but imagine an apple, okay? If someone's ass looked like that, that's a big mistake. That's what this guy's ass looked like. It actually looked like an apple. On a pear. It's the worst. Oh,
God. It is amazing. How can a human body be that bottom heavy?
it was weird.
I've seen fatter guys than him. I've never seen anyone with an ass that wide and shoulders that narrow. So Cornette's plugging the bash. The Midnight Express are just scanning the crowd for women, looking totally bored. Must not have seen anybody. Cornette says, "Tomorrow might be the end of me. I have made arrangements. My mother will be taken care of. My little dog Snuffles will be taken care of. But I promise you, one way or another, with or without me, the Midnight Express are going to win the U.S. tag titles." So the stip is, if you have forgotten, Jim Cornette in a straitjacket, in a cage, hanging above the ring, and also 10 lashes to the loser. So they finish this, and they leave, and David Crockett says, as a plug for the pay-per-view, "You've got to watch it and see Jim Cornette fall."
Yeah.
He was plugging that Jim Cornette, in a straitjacket, would fall out of this cage, and then I guess they would lash his corpse.
I think he was talking about just the fall of Jim Cornette, like the fall of
Oh,
Rome.
a metaphorical fall.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah, not that he was actually going to fall.
well, that's not nearly as tasteless.
Sure, yeah.
Because I thought he was saying Jim Cornette would plunge. Dr. Death beat Joe Cruz with a stampede.
Yep. I did like when it was over. I can't remember who Ross identified the jobber as, but it wasn't Joe Cruz. And then he was corrected, and he profusely apologized to Joe Cruz.
He did.
He messed up this man's name. That was disrespectful.
He has a job to do as a play-by-play announcer.
And he apologized.
That's to promote the wrestlers and inform the crowd at home. And on this instant, he failed at his job.
Mm-hmm.
So he corrected himself. David Crockett interviews the American Dream, who is roundly booed. Chance for Barry Windham. Dream addresses the fans who don't know what pay-per-view is. Promises to take Barry to the limit and take back the U.S. title. And yes, as has been pointed out, Dusty had been U.S. champion like 3 months ago, and they stripped him of the title after that baseball bat attack on Tully Blanchard, which I had totally forgotten he was U.S. champion then.
Yeah, where were you?
I forget. So Doc promises that he promised Jimmy Garvin that nobody would touch Precious in the Tower of Doom.
So Dusty was booed, I think because of his outfit. He had sunglasses, a cowboy hat, this bizarre 70s patterned sports jacket, and a completely preposterous purple dress shirt unbuttoned all the way to his navel.
Yeah.
What in the world was he thinking?
He was the Dream. And Doc says that they fear no evil. They're the meanest SOBs around. Had a Ric Flair promo.
So last week they had Luger go second.
Right.
Big mistake.
It was a big mistake.
They figured it out this week. They had Flair go second. But also, that ended up being a big mistake. Because maybe it wasn't a big mistake. I had the same thought I had last week. A month ago, I thought they should have pulled the trigger on Luger. Luger should have beaten Flair and become the champion. I watched this promo. I watched last week's show. All I could think was, Rick should remain the champion. Luger's not the guy right now. It's all I thought when I watched this.
Well, yeah.
That's the number one thing I got out of this. This man's the champion. Luger's the challenger. This title should not change.
That was even more clear after the pay-per-view. So it was a different Flair promo, and that the first 80% of it he was very calm, still emoting and speaking with volume, but he's not screaming his head off like he usually does. says he is the only thing standing between Luger and his people and the most coveted trophy in sports. But it is not the first time he has been under the gun. He was under pressure when he faced Dusty Rhodes. The pressure was on when he faced Harley Race. The pressure was on when he faced Ronnie Garvin. But tomorrow night, when the music hits, he's going to hit that ring looking as only he can look. That's tomorrow night. For tonight, he is going to go lay down next to a beautiful woman, have a good night. Lex is going to lay down in a cold sweat, knowing tomorrow night is the biggest night of his life. Flair starts talking about this show, 10 million people watching. He's personally is going to make $5 or $6 million because he's the champ, even though those 10 million people are tuning in because they think Lex has a chance of winning this. He holds up the belt, the only world championship belt, he's sure to say, and diamonds are forever, and so is Ric Flair. This promo should have closed the show. It was very good.
So they were predicting 30 million, and it did 200,000. So that's what?
Less than 10%.
So if he was expecting 5 million,
whatever that would be.
Guess he probably got about $500,000 for this. Probably wasn't happy leaving the building.
Yeah, I guess that's true. That way, if his Varsity Club versus George South and Rick Allen. Uneventful. Rotunda pinned Allen with a butterfly suplex. The Spam Slam of the Week was Arn Anderson doing a DDT.
A DDT?
Yeah.
That's not a slam.
It's not a slam.
Actually, he did one on the show that kind of did look like a slam, now that I think about it. To that idiot J.C. Wild.
Jim Ross is going to interview Jimmy Garvin, but then Kevin Sullivan immediately interrupts him, but then Precious immediately interrupts them both. They're both taken aback to see her, and she's not acting like Precious this week. First of all, she's very much in charge. She tells them both to shut up, tells the cameras to back up and get a look at her. Her outfit was more revealing than usual this week. Tells them to look at her up and down. This is what's really going on in the NWA. They don't know what to say. One of them kind of tries to speak. She tells them to shut up again. Says she's tired of this. She feels like a piece of meat in a butcher shop window. She feels like a tennis ball bouncing between two houses. She has the key, not just the key to the cage, the key to their lives and the key to their careers. And she storms off. Sullivan looks at Jimmy, and Jimmy looks at Sullivan. Neither one knows a damn thing about what to say, and they both just walk off.
What's bizarre about it is, now that the pay-per-view is over and we know what happened, this is weird. You know what I'm saying?
Yes. I'm going to talk about it at the end, but I assume at this point Precious's mind had not yet been made up, and after the match it very clearly was.
That's for sure.
Tully Blanchard and Arn Anderson versus Tony Suber and your hero, J.C. Wild.
So this guy is a worker. Was the worst guy on the show. This J.C. Wild.
I think you're right.
He couldn't do anything. And nothing he tried looked good.
No.
Even, like, legit getting his ass kicked, he couldn't even make look good.
So they start with Tony Suber. If you've been listening for a while, Tony Suber is a big dude, bigger than a lot of these stars.
Yeah, who won a squash several months ago, and they did nothing with it.
That is also true.
Yeah.
So they gave him a lot of stuff early. This went fairly long for a squash match, went through a break. After the break, they decide they're done with Tony Suber. So Suber actually manhandles Arn to the corner and tags in J.C. Wild. As soon as the tag is made, Arn turns around, he grabs Wild by the head, and he goes to just throw him in over the ropes into the ring. So all J.C. Wild has to do is he's grabbing the top rope. All he has to do is get pulled.
Did you see the animated GIF that I put on my Twitter of Steve Austin when he got stuck in the ropes and Triple H had to save him?
Yes.
How fucking ironic. I put that on my Twitter yesterday, and today the same goddamn thing happened with J.C. Wild.
This is actually worse because Austin did get stuck in the ropes during the main event of SummerSlam, but at least in his defense, he was stuck. The ropes
this guy was fucking stuck too.
The ropes were like around Austin.
Yes, Austin was trapped in 3 ropes.
Austin was in the ropes and got stuck. J.C. Wild got stuck on the ropes. He's just draped over the top rope and can't make it all the way over in. Arn's pulling him in. Wild's going teeter-tottering back and forth. He's out and he's in, he's out and he's in. He can't get his feet down on the apron. He can't get his head down in the ring. Finally, after a great struggle, Arn gets him into the ring.
No. Finally, how Arn gets him in the ring is he's trying to help him over the ropes. The guy's stuck, and so Arn finally hits him, and he fucking falls into the ring.
Finally got him in the ring, and Arn stares at him. And then Arn does the slow burn look back to his corner at Tully. Just what the fuck? So Arn tries to do some stuff. The guy can't sell anything. Arn whips him in. He drops to a knee, does the punch to the stomach. If you're ever running, you can do the punch to the stomach. The idea is you will flip over and land on your back. If you can't do that, hey, it's a punch to the stomach. Grab your stomach and fall down. It'll work. JC Wild grabs his stomach and jumps to flip over, but he doesn't get halfway. So he gets punched in the stomach. He grabs his stomach. He jumps over for a somersault with his hands in his stomach, lands on the top of his head. Just spikes himself into the mat. So Arn, I guess figuring this guy likes having his head spiked in the mat, DDTs him, spikes his head in the mat, and pins him.
Hey, I'll give him credit. JC Wild took a hell of a bump for that DDT.
He took a hell of a bump.
But I think it was a shoot.
He took a hell of a bump because Arn grabbed him by the head and spiked it into the mat. Arn, I think, was trying to kill him.
Well, he may have. We'll find out if we ever
He
see him
shows up
again.
next week.
Hideous.
Oh my god, this show.
Hideous.
Oh, this next match. Oh,
Yeah,
god.
this next fucking guy. Max McGiver.
Barry Windham
fucking
versus
wretched.
Max McIver.
Wretched,
Like,
wretched.
This is awful for a long time anyway. Barry Windham is clearly... Barry Windham, a consummate professional. A pro's pro. Clearly frustrated with the sack of shit he's in there with. He's working on him outside the ring. He goes to throw him in. And again, folks, it's a work. If a guy grabs you by the head, he grabs you by the trunk, he throws you at the ring, he'll let go, just roll in. And the ring's off the ground. You don't even have to jump. It's above your center of gravity. You can like fall on the apron and roll in. Wyndham throws Max McIver into the ring. He lets go so McIver can go in. McIver just keeps running. His hips hit the apron and he falls down.
Yes.
Are you kidding me?
Just thumps and falls down. Horrible.
Here, as this match is going on, as where Dylan makes his claim, maybe in the promo afterwards, who gives a shit, but 10 million people are by the show, 3 or 4 people per order. So up to 40 million people watching the show. Says it's because of Tully and Arn defending the world tag titles against Sting and whoever Sting's partner is. He forgot about Nikita.
Yeah.
This is a poorly promoted world tag team title match. Plugs the Tower of Doom, the Luger Flair match, and finally, because he's there with Barry, the teacher versus student match. And then Barry cuts a great promo. I've waited for this in my entire life, he says. You are not the teacher anymore. I stood in your shadow for a long, long time, and I always used to look up at you and think to myself, one of these days, pal. Well, that day is here. You are not walking out of Baltimore with this U.S. title, Dusty Rhodes, and your fans will know the American dream is dead. And to go home and cry to your wife and kids, because I'm going to beat you, and you're not going to be able to handle it.
God damn, there's 13 JC Wild matches on the WWE Network. Holy shit.
That sounds like torture.
JC Wild versus Kevin Sullivan rivalry?
Rivalry?
Rivalry. What does that mean?
Does that mean they wrestled more than once?
God damn, it is.
Sullivan beat up all the jobbers. Imagine him beating up JC Wild.
Oh my god. Oh, it's coming.
Are you watching it now?
No. Dick Murdoch versus JC Wild. October 1, 88.
Wow.
Oh my god. I can't wait. I'm going to have to watch part of it right now, actually.
The Sheep Herders beat Keith Steinborn and Tommy Royal. They won with a gutbuster. They did not cut a promo. Ronnie Garvin cut a promo instead. It's not easy being world champion, he says. Very few will make it. I was one of the fortunate. As my main man, Dusty Rhodes, will be the U.S. champ in Baltimore. Ric Flair, if I were you, I'd be shaking in my boots. I've never seen a man as determined as Lex Luger. And in that triple cage, I've got a lot of work to do, but somebody's going to get hurt. Because when I get into a fight, the other side knows they've been in a fight. And that was that.
This was when I was going to ask, can you name the 10 men in this cage?
At this time, as it turns out, I could not.
I couldn't either.
Because I forgot Al Perez was in it.
Yes.
Which is funny, because Al Perez is in the next match.
He squashed Agent Steel, and it was boring.
So Gary Hart gets a promo, or he tries to. He was probably going to plug the Tower of Doom, But Crockett keeps interrupting him to ask questions about the other matches.
Predictions for the show.
Hart tries to play neutral, tries to play the analyst, pick the winners based on strength and weaknesses and who's got momentum or whatnot. And he again promises not just the most watched pro wrestling event, but Crockett, I should say. Crockett promises the greatest pro wrestling event in the history of the world. That's a quote. The greatest pro wrestling event in the history of the world.
Well, you know what? It wasn't.
No, he was wrong.
He was incorrect.
Most are better. Okay, so we watched these 3 matches for the Great American Bash.
I just want to mention, looks like Bam Bam Bigelow is on that October 1988 NWA.
He shows up?
Yeah, he shows up there and destroying dudes, and I'll wait. I'm very, very tempted to watch this match, but I'll wait. J.C. Wilde and Dick Murdoch. I can't even imagine. All right, The Bash. The Great American Bash, 1988.
So this Tower of Doom thing.
Where to begin?
There's like 10 minutes of setup involved. I didn't see the actual cage being constructed.
Dude, the cage is already set up. There's no reason for this 10 minutes of bullshit before the match starts.
This is important. This isn't 10 minutes of putting up the cage. I look up, there's a cage on TV, but there's still 10 minutes to go before the match actually begins.
Yes.
There's ladders being raised going up there. The ref's got to climb the ladders because the ref's got to operate the trapdoors.
Well, there's a ref. So Tommy Young is in the top cage. Dick Worley is in the middle cage.
Yes.
And senior referee Precious is in the bottom cage with the key.
Yes.
Okay. This poor fucker, Tommy Young. They find the most terrified of heights referee. They send him up this goddamn ladder. Mm-hmm. So it takes him an hour to get up there because he's petrified. He finally gets on the cage, and he doesn't get to go in the cage.
Yes, he's on the roof of the second cage.
He's on the roof of the second cage, which is very narrow.
It's about 1 foot.
He's holding on for dear life.
Yeah.
Now, once he's up there, we got another 5 minutes of everyone just sitting around. I'm like, what in the fuck are we waiting for
I
here?
think, based on their reactions and when they would occasionally show the shot of what the Young was doing up there, they were trying to get the trapdoors to work. The trapdoors were apparently broken.
Maybe that's fucking something to work on before the goddamn show starts.
I agree.
So it's the Russians and the varsity squad, but not Rick Steiner.
As we later eventually figured out. I forgot Al Perez was in this match until he entered.
Yes.
And then I was trying to figure out who was not in it.
And the Road Warriors and the Garvins and Dr. Death.
Yes.
That's correct, right?
That is correct.
Okay.
So, eventually, the match starts. Now, for those of you who haven't been paying attention, every 2 minutes, one guy from each team enters.
They enter by climbing a ladder to the very top.
So they're
and getting in a tiny cage.
20-some feet off the ground, maybe 30-some, and in a cage that might be 12 feet.
Oh, hell fucking no.
10?
6.
That's more than 6, but it's
I don't think so, because you had 2 men and all they could do was punch each other.
I could punch a guy.
I guess maybe they had 4. I think it was probably 6 by 6. And the second was probably 12 by 12. And the last was probably 20 by, or it'd have to be 24 by 24 because you have the extra room around the ring.
Yeah.
So I bet it's 6, 12, 24.
I think it's, regardless, it's a tiny cage.
It's tiny.
There's 2 guys could at least punch each other back and forth and ram each other in the cage. When they had 4 guys in there, no one could do a goddamn
yes.
thing. Yeah.
Yes.
So
that's 36 square feet.
So for 2 minutes, nothing happens, is the point. It's Ronnie Garvin and Ivan Koloff, 2 former world champions, by the way.
And you can't see anything.
They're up there. There's only one camera angle, but mostly they're showing guys on the floor doing this.
Yeah. And not only that, they're up so high that the top cage is...
It's in the lights.
It's inside the lighting rig.
The lighting rig is blocking these guys from the waist up.
Yes! Fuck! So, there's a trap door in the top cage that Tommy Young's got open.
Yeah.
And after 2 minutes, there's a horn that sounds. And here's what happens. The door is open for like 10 seconds. The trap door. Right? 10 seconds?
About, sure.
It's a very short period of time.
Yeah.
So somehow the guys in the cage have to get down in that 10 seconds or it closes again. And meanwhile, 2 other guys are getting into this tiny cage.
Yeah.
So in theory, if nobody could get through that trap door, eventually you would have 10 guys in a 6x6 cage.
It basically would have been an elevator.
Yes.
Crowded elevator.
So the goddamn horn sounds, and Dr. Death gets in there, and they're trying to open the trap door. They can't. Ivan, I believe, throws powder, but then he just falls down. And somehow Garvin makes it through the trap door before it closes. So he is now in the second cage.
Alone.
Yep. And it's 2-on-1 in the top cage. And by the way, we should mention, you mentioned them ramming each other into the side. Every time someone rammed somebody into the side of that cage, the whole fucking cage shook like it was going to collapse.
I'm glad you brought that up. Because that did happen. And meanwhile, because every 2 minutes a guy's got to enter, they didn't want to get the horn to go off and guys have to climb the whole ladder. So they're outside on the ladder, leaning against the cage, which is ricketing and rocketing back and forth.
Dude, how did no one die?
How did no one get sued?
Well, no one died.
I guess not.
What are you going to sue for? Fear?
Yes!
That doesn't work like that, Vinny.
I bet it does. Reckless endangerment. So Ronnie Garvin's alone in the middle cage, got nothing to do. So we only watch the top cage, which again we still can't see because of the lights. It's Ivan Koloff and Mike Rotunda beating up Dr. Death 2-on-1 for 2 minutes. Next phase opens. Garvin goes to the bottom. Doc and Ivan go to the middle. And now Rotunda and Al Perez, or as Tony Schiavone noted, I think that's Al Perez. We're
Could have
beating
been
up
Seth Rollins.
Animal in the top. Well, who can tell? You can't see. The lights are in the way. So Garvin's alone in the bottom cage. He looks around. He's got nothing to do. He just leaves.
Yep, so he's out.
He's out.
Precious opens the door for him.
They go to a wide shot. You can't tell anything going on in any cage. Hawk comes in the top cage. He's somehow a house of fire in that tiny little thing.
So this is the third horn.
Third horn.
Okay, it's now the third horn.
Mm-hmm.
Hawk gets in there. He's going crazy. And up the ladder climbs Sullivan and
Jimmy
Garvin.
Yeah.
They're getting ready to go.
So we have at this point Animal and Doc versus Ivan Koloff and Al Perez in the middle cage, with Mike Rotunda and the Russian Assassin versus Hawk up top.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing happens for a while. Next horn. Animal and Al Perez go to the bottom. Ivan and the Assassin, the Russians, versus Hawk and Dr. Death in the middle. And now it's Rotunda and Sullivan double-teaming Jimmy Garvin in the top cage.
Fucking Mike Rotundo has had 4 fucking opportunities to go through that goddamn trap door. He's still stuck in the top cage. Dude.
So, in the bottom cage now, it's Animal versus Al Perez. They do some stuff in the ring for a little bit. Animal wins this little fight. And so the goal, the first team to escape the cage leaves. But here's the problem with this. Animal beats up Al Perez and leaves. But then Al gets to his feet, and now there's no one to stop him from leaving. He leaves too.
Yes. You know what's the best part about
this
it?
match is dumb.
You know the best part? So the announcers didn't know if it was Al Perez. Well, on top of that, Al Perez leaves. Nobody notices.
Yes.
I waited 5 minutes for somebody to notice that Al Perez had gotten out.
In my defense, I can imagine trying to call this match. There's 3 cages of stuff. There's 3 cages of stuff going on, but at the same time, there's nothing going on.
Well, I mean,
It's hard to keep track of, but there's nothing we're keeping track of anyway.
I'm keeping track of Rotundo. He finally got to the second cage on the 5th horn sound. Russians got into the bottom cage.
With Hawk.
Yep.
This is the Hawk versus the Russians was the first time there's extended stuff of guys doing moves in a ring.
Yes.
So this is the best part of the match. It lasted 30 seconds, and then they all just left. Because it doesn't matter who wins in the bottom cage, because if one guy leaves, the other guys can leave too. So who cares? To make a long story short here, it finally comes down to Jimmy Garvin and Kevin Sullivan in the middle cage. Rotunda makes it to the bottom and gets out. They both make it into the bottom cage then, Garvin and Sullivan. And all I could think at this point was, this would have been so much better if they had just done Jimmy Garvin versus Kevin Sullivan in a cage match. They could have made it a big cage like the last Battle of Atlanta to have Precious out there with the key. They could have done that whole thing anyway and not do this whole Tower of Doom bullshit.
Yeah, because the only good part of this match
is the
was
end.
From here on out.
Yes.
Everything else was awful.
So Jimmy hits a brain buster on Sullivan. He turns to Precious and begs her for the key. Give me the key so I can win. And she hesitates. She's reluctant. She's still conflicted. But finally she gives him the key and he goes to open the door. But then Kevin Sullivan springs his trap. This whole thing has been a fiendish trap he has laid from day one. And Jimmy goes to open the door, but Sullivan runs up, pushes him out the door, and then locks it behind him.
So Garvin's team wins.
Yes.
But now Sullivan is locked in the cage with Precious all by himself.
With Patty. Now the crowd's going apeshit. Now we've got a horror movie. Now we have the...
And it was awesome.
And we have the heroine trapped in the cage with the monster. And the best part about it is, this was not Fay Ray and King Kong while all she was Scream. Precious fought back. She defended herself. She pulled off her heel. She's going after his eyeball. She's trying to fight to survive. As this is going on, the good guys are frantically trying to climb the ladder back up, and the bad guys are still trying to fight them. That must have been terrifying, by the way, climbing this ladder with dudes fighting on it. So, Sullivan here is the monster. He does finally get his hands on Precious, but then he pulls tape or something out of his tight, or a chain or something. He's going to strangle her.
He is strangling her. He's choking her to death with his rope.
And just in the nick of time, Hawk is there to pull him off and attack him. Jimmy's there to escort Precious to safety, and it gets out, and that's the end.
So here's my question.
Right.
After all that, why did Hawk make the save? The only thing I can figure is that Jimmy was too slow, or he got stuck trying to get through that goddamn trap door.
They were struggling with that last trap door.
Yes.
And the announcers were saying something about Rick Steiner from the outside trying to block them.
Yes. Garvin is the one who should have, he got knocked out of the cage. His wife is in there. She's getting strangled. He's got to climb his ass all the way back up to the top, go all the way down through all the trap doors and save her. That's what it should have been. Instead, Hawk saved her, and then Garvin just rushes in afterwards. And Ross screams, "She stood by her man!"
Yes.
And the last 5 minutes were very good.
Yeah, this is one of those matches where you sit back and say, how do I rate this? It was not a good wrestling match at all. But it paid off all their storylines, paid off every angle, and had a great finish that sent the crowd home happy. So I guess it's a success.
I think it was a success, but
I don't ever want to watch it again.
it could have been better. It could have been different. It could have been shorter.
It could have been simpler.
It could have been less stupid.
It could have been shorter.
Yep. All we needed was the final little deal right here.
Yeah. Barry Windham versus Dusty Rhodes. I forget which announcer said this, but one of them pointed out, Rhodes has the weight advantage.
You don't say.
He does.
You know, the thing about this match is very early on, Dusty is on fire.
Yes.
He does a high cross off the top.
He does a press slam.
He's dancing. He's throwing his punches. He's moving great. I'm like, man, look at this guy. He must have been training his ass off for this. Throws poor Windham around, gives him a backdrop outside, gives him a body slam. This is no pretty blue mats, nothing.
Bare cement.
It's on the cement. He's just killing this dude.
Slingshot to the floor.
And then finally, Windham jumps him from behind. And for 3 straight hours, he applies the Iron Claw. And this match ground to a halt. He clawed him.
That claw may still be on.
And he clawed him.
Somewhere in the streets of Baltimore, that claw still exists.
They did a spot where Windham has him in the claw, and Dusty's on his knees. And he's selling the claw, and he's fading, and he's starting to go, and the ref raises his arm and it drops, and then he raises his arm and it drops, and he raises his arm and Dusty starts to fight. I shouldn't have flexed. He starts to fight, and he gets to his...
borrow some arm flab to jiggle that?
He gets to his feet, okay, and he starts to walk backwards, still in the claw, and he puts his foot on the bottom rope. And then he puts his other foot on the bottom rope. Then he climbs to the middle rope. Windham has still got the claw on him. And he climbs his other foot to the middle rope. The claw is still applied. And Dusty raises his arm up into the air because he's going to drop that big bionic elbow. The place goes crazy. But then he fades and falls to his knees. And he sits there on his knees for 5 more minutes. He was in this claw forever. He didn't even bleed. I guess he couldn't, given the main event finish.
No, but this was... I may go back in time, this claw hold.
Oh, my God. It seriously was 7 minutes.
It was a minimum of 5 minutes, probably more, of just a claw. Now, I will say this. There's a lesson to be learned here for young wrestlers about how to get the most out of one submission hold. Because if you're going to do a...
but Vinny, the problem is you can do this if you're with Dusty Rhodes.
Yes.
I can't get in there with the Jungle Boy and claw him for 10 minutes.
Actually, I think you should.
Well,
I would really like it if you did.
I'm pretty sure that's not going to happen.
Yeah. So there's a long claw hold. The referee gets bumped.
After all that.
Actually, before I do want to talk about this more. The early match portion where Barry's just getting his ass kicked. He took the backdrop on the floor, the body slam on the floor, the slingshot to the floor, all these floor bumps. The backdrop I want to talk about the most because he grabs Dusty, he sets him up for a pile driver. Now, obviously, he gets backdropped, but this was the slowest, most dramatic backdrop you ever saw. Usually, when you do a backdrop, the guy giving it explodes up, and the guy taking the backdrop jumps as high as he can to get the most air. Dusty, he's bent over for the pile driver, and he slowly starts to stand, and Wyndham looks up in horror, and Dusty stands taller and taller. So Dusty slowly stands up. Barry is arching his back. It's actually like a super back extension, looking around in horror and terror, knowing what's going to befall him, and eventually he tumbles over to his back. It was an amazing backdrop. So finally the ref is bumped. Dusty sort of hits a middle rope press slam, if you can imagine that. Follows it with a big elbow, makes the cover, no ref. Looking around, not sure what to do. Here's his old buddy Ronnie Garvin there to hit the ring and watch his back. Then he pats Dusty on the shoulder, and Dusty turns around, and Ronnie hits him with the hands of stone.
Oh, my God.
Lays him out cold. No one can believe this.
I can't.
Wyndham puts the claw on Dusty's corpse.
No, what he does, Dusty has been knocked out, okay? Mm-hmm. He's flat on his back.
Yes.
He's like...
He's a wet rag.
What's his name? It wasn't J.C. Wild.
Danny Little?
He's Danny Little. He's laying there dead like Danny Little, okay?
He has a much better physique than Danny Little.
Barry Windham stands over him, lifts him to a seated position.
Correct, yes.
Applies the claw, and then puts him back on his back.
Right.
Can't just apply the claw when he's flat.
No.
You gotta lift him up, claw him to his back.
Now he can claim it was the claw that put Dusty Rhodes down.
The referee counts to pin, and that is the end of that.
Yeah.
They go backstage, and there is J.J. Dillon, Gary Hart, and a table with money all over it. Ron Garvin is there celebrating. He's rubbing his face in the money like it's boobs. He's rubbing money all over his body. He's howling with laughter. He takes all the money and he leaves. Just to make it abundantly clear to you dumb shits out there,
yes.
He did it for the money.
Hey.
Which for a guy like Ron Garvin, his character, dastardly.
Yes,
He's no longer driving that pickup truck.
No more trucker caps, I guess.
No. So, by the way, for the record, a bullshit finish leading into our main event of the evening. Ric Flair versus Lex Luger for the NWA World Heavyweight title.
Okay, first thing that annoyed me. I realize this is small potatoes in the grand scheme of things. They both come out there in yellow and white. I like that. Flair's in white and yellow. That's weird, I thought to myself. They go over. Lex is also in white and yellow. It's irritating.
It's impossible to tell them apart.
Yeah, I often got confused as to which was Lex Luger and which was Ric Flair. Now, we haven't talked about this with Lex much. He had a habit. I guess you'd call it a nervous habit early in his career. And there's highlight reels of it that make it abundantly clear. If you pay attention, he'll do it once in a while. But he must have been really nervous in this match because when Lex gets nervous, Lex adjusts his junk. And he was adjusting his junk over and over again in the early portions of this match. I guess it's to make sure everything is still tucked into his trunks. Once the match started, he is a hell of an athlete. Hell of a dropkick, hell of a leapfrog. 1,000 press slams. Eventually, Flair just takes him outside, chops him, throws him into the guardrail. He's got the heat. And then this match went for like 6 hours.
Well, instead of a claw, we got a bear hug from Luger.
There was a long bear hug.
Then once Flair got the heat, it was every Ric Flair match you ever saw in your whole life.
And when you say every, I think you mean in a row. Like you sat in and watched 1,000 Ric Flair matches. This was like that.
This was
it took that long to do.
It's not the best Flair Luger match I've ever seen.
No, and this made it abundantly clear. It was not the right time to pull the trigger on Lex. He could not deliver. He did not deliver in the ring at this point. He had a boring match in a main event with Ric Flair.
Yeah.
This may be the only one that ever happened.
There also was so I believe this was the videotape version of the show that they put on the WWE Network and not the pay-per-view feed. Because apparently in real life, there's a spot at the end where Flair goes up to the top rope for the throw, and there's no Luger. And so Flair stands there for like 30 seconds before Luger finally gets over to throw him off. That did not happen in this version.
All right.
He just was right there. Throws him off, does all of his near falls. They also do a JC Wild and a Stone Cold Steve Austin. They try to do the double bump over the top rope and they get stuck. And they were so stuck. Luger is trying to pull both of them over. And the referee practically has to throw them both out to help them.
Yeah.
Bump on the floor. And then Luger gets posted. I won't tell the whole story, but I once had to get color for a match with Buddy. And I forgot that it was Luger that bled when they stopped this match. I thought it was Flair.
All right. Yeah.
Because they busted open Luger, and Luger vowed to do the same to Flair. And so I thought the story was going to be that he busted open Flair and they stopped the match and Flair retained the title that way.
Yeah.
Because I guess, in WWE, WWF, title didn't change on a blood stoppage. If Bruno was bleeding too bad, they stopped the match, but he retained the title.
I see.
I don't know what they did in the NWA. But anyway, so I was wondering this because I'm watching the match and I noticed that Luger's got the tape on his fingers and Flair doesn't. I'm like, Flair usually has tape on his fingers because for those who don't know, there's a way to tape your fingers and you tape the blade or you basically put the blade in the tape in such a way that you kind of push it up and the blade comes out.
Right.
So you can have the blade hidden so you can use your fingers, but when the time's right, you push it out of there and then you do the deal.
Right. So
Buddy put the tape on my fingers, and he put the gimmick in there so that I would push it up and everything like that. And long story short, it came out early, and so every time I chopped him, I sliced his fucking chest open.
Excellent.
And then when it's time for me to cut myself, I did it, and then he goes, "Did you do it?" And I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "Nothing came out. Do it again." So I went overcompensated, still got nothing out. And so anyway, I sliced my fucking head open 15 times for no blood. Luger didn't quite do that, but Luger needs to be profusely bleeding.
Yeah.
He needs to be, in the words of the commission, what's the word they used? Severe lacerations on the head of Lex Luger. Instead, he's barely bleeding.
He basically cut himself shaving just on his forehead.
Yeah, he's got a little bit of blood trickling out. He puts Flair in the rack. The commissioner is telling something to the referee.
The commissioner's on his feet before the rack, so there was a sign trouble as a foot.
And the announcers are not even pretending. Like, the whole time Tony's like, this commissioner's saying something to the referee. So the referee calls for the bell. I will say, the place went fucking crazy.
Place went apeshit.
Yep. And then they make the big announcement. The commission stopped the match due to severe lacerations on the head of Lex Luger. Flair retains the title. They are fucking furious.
This place is angry.
So the story here, everybody, it's like WWE today. The story was they expected the fans to be angry at the commission.
Right.
Nice try.
Didn't work.
No. They'd been fucked so many times that they were outraged at World Championship Wrestling. These people left this building. There were people that were in this building that went to a lot of shows, and they said they'd never seen people leave with this kind of fury. They were so angry. They're chanting bullshit. They're just leaving. This was a fucking terrible idea.
Yep.
If you didn't want to put the title on Luger, fine.
Beat him.
Do something.
Yes.
This was bullshit. And the announcers made it very clear. A very strict commission. In a lot of states, they wouldn't stop the match for this.
It did actually say that. If this hadn't been in Baltimore.
Because the idea was they were going to tour with it. So Luger and Flair are going to come to Seattle. You saw Luger rack the guy.
Mm-hmm.
If Luger racks that motherfucker in Seattle and he's bleeding, Seattle ain't stop. Actually, that's a bad example because Seattle would stop the match. But someone else, for example, Texas ain't stopping this fucking match.
Fine work, Bryan.
You'd have to chop the guy's head off. They'd keep the match going. But anyway, that was the idea. It didn't work. Fans are furious.
It did not work.
Nah, it was just a terrible fucking idea. A bad match on top of it, cap off everything. A bullshit finish prior to this bullshit finish.
I actually hear an hour later now that after we watched it, I am starting to feel ripped off. I watched that bill for 2 months. 3 months, I guess.
Yeah. You didn't even listen to it on the hotline for 99 cents.
I didn't pay $200 to listen. Oh my god!
Can you imagine $200 fucking dollars, and then you find out at the end the commission stopped the match?
Oh god!
Yeah.
So yeah, thumbs down, everyone.
And I think actually this was the first time in my life, and maybe the only time, that there were Luger chants. You ever heard of fans chant Luger's name?
I'm sure at some point I have.
It's just weird. It doesn't sound right. It sounds like booing. But they actually were chanting Luger when he won.
Yeah.
Baby faces are out there. Sting's got his pants hiked up to his pecs and no shirt on.
It wasn't amazing.
It's not even like he's wearing suspenders. And he pulled him up that high.
He's showers, no face paint, but he's still Sting. So he's got the huge Brian Bosworth sunglasses on.
Yeah. This was just so weird. Anyway, that's the bash, everybody. Thank God we built that up for 3 months for that. But hey, next week we continue on.
I also feel guilty about letting the fans down. It's not my fault. I feel bad.
Don't yell at us, everybody.
Yes.
We didn't book this show. So there you go.
And there will be gorilla shit all over the Omni.
Weird.
Time is weird.
Yes.
31 years old, this show is.
31 years old.
NWA World Championship Wrestling, July 16th of 1988. So first of all, we've been watching these superstar shows, and I've not been a fan. But one thing that is clear where they have the upper hand is the production quality.
This production was horrible.
The audio in this segment was terrible.
Yes.
There were many, many terrible camera shots, as we'll go through here, but through very scratchy, distorted voices, the announcers talk about the bash matches. They say that the matches were close and controversial, but they don't say who won yet. Got to keep viewers tuned in. They congratulate Dusty Rhodes and the Road Warriors for winning the six-man tag team championships. Say the Midnight Express are the new U.S. tag team champions, and they're doing a West Coast tour with stops including Las Vegas and Seattle.
So that was obviously not at the pay-per-view that Dusty and the Road Warriors won those belts.
Yeah, I think they mentioned where, but they didn't say who they beat or how it happened.
Because Dusty wrestled on that show.
And he lost.
He did not look in condition to wrestle again afterwards, so
No.
I presume that was the only time.
Our opener. And I think I could talk for about 4 hours about this opener alone.
Well, let me talk about what I wrote down here.
All right.
Okay? Mm-hmm. So, first I wrote the Green Horny versus Dale Lapperouse.
I'm so happy you're wrong.
Okay. Then I corrected it to the Green Hornet, but unfortunately I put that on the other side. So what I got here was the Green Horny and Dale Lapperouse versus the Green Hornet and Dr. Death. That's wrong, right?
That is very wrong.
Okay.
The match was Sting and Dr. Death versus Dale Lapperouse and, yes, everyone, the Green Hornet.
Yeah.
Not that Green Hornet.
Dude, this Green Hornet was built like a bumblebee. There's no way he could fly.
No.
Just no way.
So, I had to watch this again to be sure, but I think this may have been my favorite match ever.
I don't know if I'd go that far.
Sting comes out.
Well, this was the best Sting ever.
Before the match even begins. Now, I'm not accusing anyone of anything. Let's say, for the sake of argument, for the sake of discussion, that every single person on the show was doing massive amounts of cocaine.
Okay.
No one was doing more than Sting.
No.
Sting, he's screaming his head off before he's even on camera. You just hear him. Wah! He just comes out like a madman, a lunatic. He's just screaming over and over again. They get in the ring with the Green Hornet. Now, I wrote down literally every single move they did.
Really?
It's a little too long to repeat here.
I don't think so. We got all night.
So
please take us through this match, Vinny.
Sting is in there with the Green Hornet, who, as you noted, looks in no condition to fly.
No.
Fortunately,
he's not in condition to walk.
Fortunately, Sting and Dr. Death are mighty, mighty men. So they get in there with this big fat guy, and he totally dead weights him, and they just herk him to the sky and slam him back down.
Yeah.
So Sting does a body slam, drops an elbow, makes a tag. Doc does a body slam, drops an elbow, makes a tag. Sting hits a body slam, drops an elbow, makes a tag. I was hoping they would just do this like 8 times. Doc switched things up. Doc says, I'm going to grab this guy, who I can barely get my arms around, and I'm going to give him a pile driver. Now,
do you have to describe how to take a pile driver for like the 50th time on this show?
have I done it before?
Like 50 times.
All right, I won't go into detail here, but suffice
I'll
to
just say this.
Don't do what the Green Hornet did.
Okay, when you're being lifted up and you're upside down, hold on to your opponent's legs.
Yes.
Okay.
Keep your arms
This fucking
in
idiot
position to protect your head.
puts his arms straight out to the side like this. Like straight out to the side as he's upside down. So like, there's no way for Dr. Death to really take care of the guy.
No.
You can take care of him if he's also holding on to you because you're working together. Mm-hmm. So he lifts this fucking guy up, and the Green Hornet puts his arms straight out to the side like this, and Dr. Death just figured, if he dies, he dies.
Basically, yes.
And he fucking sat down, and this guy landed right on his head, and he didn't die. I don't know how, but he lived, and then they tagged out and killed Dale Lapidus.
If this had been any other man but Dr. Death Steve Williams, he's probably dead. This Green Hornet's probably dead, because Doc's the only guy who, through a waist lock alone, could control his weight enough to not let him drop with all his weight on top of his head. So yes, then they let Dale Lapidus tag in, but Sting was not satisfied with the Green Hornet's positioning, so he pushed Green Hornet out of the ring more. Dale Lapidus, we've talked about before, he also sucks. His highlight was he takes a big backdrop, and Doc throws him through the air, and Doc turns around and he preps that arm for his big clothesline. And Dale Lapidus stays down. And Doc claps his hands, and Dale Lapidus stays down. And Doc is cocking his arm. He's ready to go. And Dale Lapidus stays down. Like an hour later, Dale Lapidus stands up, and Doc clotheslines him. It is finally time for the finish. Doc goes for the Oklahoma Stampede, the running power slam, and I think it was still Lapidus, right?
Oh, it's definitely Dale Lapidus.
Well, we don't have to be.
That's for sure.
He gets him up, and he's doing like laps around the ring carrying this man, and it's so easy that he almost runs into the ropes and falls over.
Well, Dale Lapidus got his long-ass legs caught in the ropes.
That may have been it.
And they almost killed themselves, but then he power slammed him and won.
Yes.
This was a Crockett squash match with 2 stars and 2 absolute geeks.
It was so awesome.
It was amazing.
It was so awesome. They say that Ric Flair won in the World Championship match against Lex Luger, but Luger also proved he should be world champion.
Yeah.
And they go to the tape. And they show what happened. Lex has the man up in the torture rack, but he's bleeding. The ref calls to the bell. Flair wins due to blood stoppage.
So all of the announcers agreed that Luger should be the world heavyweight champion,
Mm-hmm.
but then our main man, Jim Crockett Jr., shows up. Jim Crockett Jr. says, this is the first match that I ever saw where I actually thought that there were 2 winners.
That's right. What a promoter.
Are you kidding me?
What a great promoter.
Dude, the shittiest fuck finish in the history of shitty fuck finishes. And you fucking come out here and tell the people, I thought there were 2 winners in that match. Jesus, the temerity of this fucking guy.
He says it took 7 months to sign that match. He hopes it doesn't take another 7 months to do the rematch.
I hope we don't ever see a finish like that for like 7 years.
J.J. Dillon and Ric Flair come out for a promo. J.J. says today should be a day to rejoice.
Yeah.
Because Ric Flair has shown once again why he is the greatest champion of all times. Flair says when he was a kid, he used to hate to say it, but it's true, the rich get richer.
We need to talk about, just before even recap what Flair says, Flair is in rare form for Ric Flair.
True.
This is the most braggadocious you've ever seen Ric Flair. Like, he has never been so proud to have won a match, and by the way, such a shitty fashion.
Yes.
But he's out there bragging that everything that he said was true, and Luger is number 2, and he's got to live with it. Just the most heelish heel promo you've ever seen. Because, obviously, the reality is he escaped by the skin of his teeth. Mm-hmm. But that's not the story Ric Flair's telling.
Now, the story Ric Flair's telling is that he's rich get richer for all of Lex's talent. He was still second best. Every night he says, I laid my head on the pillow, and somebody looks at me and says, Champ, you're the only one. What a feeling to lie down next to a world champion. Says Luger's second best. He needs to think about that when he's at the gym or in the limo or in the airport. And finally, he just screams, "Second best, Luger! Ha ha!"
He says, "You, my friend, are second best. Live with it."
Yes.
And then him and Dylan high five, and off they go.
They were great.
Oh, they were great assholes.
Brad Armstrong versus Larry Stevens. So the match
This
begins.
show is an hour long,
Yeah.
okay? And they send this guy out here to do 5 hours worth of arm bars.
It's not even that. We'll talk about the match in a minute. This is where the technical issues started to hit again. Usually when they go from a promo to the ring or they come back for a commercial, there's a wide shot of the ring, there's graphics with the names on it, and the match begins and they go from there. That happens. There's Brad Armstrong versus Larry Stevens. The match begins, and then the camera like zooms in and gets blurry. And you can't really see anything. They get out of that, and then like a minute later, Brad Armstrong does in fact have an arm bar on, but the camera is focused so poorly you can't see either dude's head. This is very amateurish production. Then it got worse. We got to see the match clearly.
Do you remember
Back and forth.
Do you remember when I used to wrestle Buddy and Crazy Wayne would be there? And he'd be so mad that we were just doing arm bars, and he'd always like scream, "Arm bar!"
While filming.
Yeah. It's like, dude, we didn't do that many arm bars. So I know what he feels like now, because I watched this match, and that's what I think. I just want to yell at the TV, "Arm bar," when like they're going to do something else, because I know what they're going to go to. It's a fucking arm bar. There's no way Buddy and I ever had a match as boring as this fucking Brad Armstrong jobber match with this Larry Stevens. I don't even know why it had to go on for so long.
Why did Larry Stevens get the heat on Brad Armstrong?
Fucking who knows? The bigger issue is Armstrong did an arm bar, and then he did another arm bar, and then he laid on the mat with an arm bar, and then Larry Stevens like did some stuff, and then Brad Armstrong did another fucking arm bar.
Yeah.
And finally, at the end, he hits this beautiful drop kick. Like, the prettiest drop kick you ever saw. Didn't even touch the guy. It was just perfect. Like, he could drop kick me 1,000 times. Hits the side Russian leg sweep and wins. And I was just like, did this get over back then? You know what I mean? Because everyone would always talk about Brad Armstrong. He's got no charisma. He's got no personality, but my God, what a fucking great worker. Do people actually think back then watching these matches? I can't fathom it. There's too much action on this show. Do people really get into the arm bars? It's impossible. And then he actually cut a decent, bizarre promo where in his thick Brad Armstrong Southern accent, he proceeded. I wish I would have just. I couldn't bring myself to rewind because I was afraid I'd see part of the match again. But he rapped.
He did.
He fucking rapped about Luger winning and how he himself will be staying on top of the NWA. Does he know what the top is? Because he ain't there. So I don't know what the fuck he's talking about. But yes, he rapped.
I would have to
And
look up.
it was good.
I would have to look up how old the Road Dogg was when this promo was taped. But my guess is Road Dogg wrote this promo for him.
It may have.
Because I can believe Road Dogg listens to rap music. His finishing line was, "BA ain't here to play. He's here to stay and come out on top in the NWA."
Yeah.
And I assume Bryan must have wrote that for him. It's the only thing I can think of.
Fuck if I know. But man, I was actually more impressed with Brad Armstrong's promo than his match.
Yes. Yeah.
Is this hindsight being 2020 or was this the same thought process back in 1989?
I guess times just change. Barry Windham promo. First of all,
Also gloating.
Barry Windham's out there in white jeans, no shirt, gold chain around his neck, and a leather vest.
The gloating on this show.
Just so...
He was dripping in gloat.
Absolutely, absolutely. And Crockett mentions that they won due to Ronnie Garvin's interference, and they are quick to correct him. They needed no help. They needed no interference.
It's part of the plan.
It was all part of the plan. Barry Windham took the best weapon in wrestling, the claw, and put the legend down for a 3 count.
So they showed clips from this match, Dusty and Barry Windham. And I must not have watched close enough the first time. I mean, it was everything that I saw the first time, but watching it a second time, it's very different from watching the PCO match again.
I'll say.
Fucking... So we talked about how they worked the claw forever, and Dusty to the spot where in the claw he started to fire up, and then he backed up, and he climbed up to the first turnbuckle, and he climbed to the second turnbuckle, and he raised his elbow high in the air, and then he just collapsed again down into the middle of the ring. It's possible I fell asleep after that spot right there, but there was more. Dusty starts to fire up from the claw again, and he starts to stand up and shake a little bit and shimmy, and he breaks free of the claw. He knocks down Barry. Barry's on his back with his legs in the air. Dusty grabs his leg. He does a spinning toe hold to set up for the figure four. And as he reaches down for the other leg, up comes the claw.
Back in the claw.
And he gets put back in the fucking claw again. I think I said that they were in the claw for 15 minutes. This was like an hour. There's no way this match was only... They did a 15-minute claw or 15-minute call. And I was like, bullshit. They have been in the claw alone for at least 35 minutes here in this clip that I just watched. And finally, he fought out of the claw again, and he went up top, and out comes Garvin. I'm sure we mentioned this the first time, but this had to be the biggest bump that Dusty Rhodes had taken in at least a decade for Ronnie Garvin's punch. He bumped. His legs went one way. His torso went the other way. He had to go to the chiropractor the next day after this bump. He's dead in the middle of the ring, and he gets pinned. This was just a spectacle.
It sure was.
I just watched it. I thought, where's Dusty Rhodes over at WrestleMania weekend so I could wrestle him? Oh, with a match we could have.
He's not available.
Damn it.
So, Barry, yes, he's sure to say the bottom line is right here. The undisputed champion is staring you in the face, and he holds up the U.S. belt. Says Ronnie Garvin, he did not need Ronnie Garvin's help, but Ronnie Garvin was part of their plan.
That doesn't even make sense.
No, the plan was to screw Dusty. They didn't want to just beat him. They wanted to screw him. So... They show everything you just talked about, and now it's Ronnie Garvin, J.J. Dillon, and Gary Hart out there. So apparently the plan was for Garvin to turn heel, and Gary Hart would manage him. A fine plan, actually. Dillon holds up a copy of the Price for Freedom VHS video cassette. He promises this video will go gold because he himself is going to buy 100,000 copies. He's going to savor those last two matches. It has been his goal for 8 years, he says, to destroy the myth of Dusty Rhodes. Thought he had it done before, but someone wouldn't listen to him. Talking about Luger. Says he and Hart had an infallible plan. $50,000, they said.
I did love when he said they paid Garvin $50,000. And he says, that was a small price to pay. And I thought, well, if you're spending $19.95 100,000 times to buy that fucking videotape, that is a small price to pay. That $50,000 to Garvin.
That's true. So Gary says their plan proved they can hit anyone they want, and turns to Ronnie and says, next time we see Dusty's face, I want his jaw hanging off to one side. I want him to eat only soup. And Ronnie just says he has proven he will do anything for money, and he laughs. And when he said that, it occurred to me, how many Dusty Rhodes promos have we seen where he brags about how much money he has?
Yeah.
The next step in this should have been that he just outbid them and got Garvin back.
You know, I just... This to me, this Garvin turn is like something out of WWE today. Like, Garvin's character forever has been, I don't care about the money. Mm-hmm. I drive a pickup truck. And now it's just, I'm all about the money.
Yeah.
I'll do anything for money. What? Why? What happened?
Well, he's bad now, you see.
Ridiculous.
Yeah. Yes, it is.
He needs JJ, and I guess he had JJ there. Like, JJ's always great at making sense of anything.
True.
It doesn't matter what happens, JJ can explain why this happened. There was literally no explanation for Garvin turning, except the man who drives a pickup truck one day suddenly decided, God damn, I'll do anything for money. Like, that's all we've got here.
He just changed his mind.
This sucked.
Dick Murdoch versus Curtis Thompson.
This did not suck.
Oh, no, it did not.
And you know, they're plugging during this match, because Kevin Sullivan is out there. They're plugging that at the end of July, at Cobo Hall, there's going to be the following match, which I am not making up. Dusty Rhodes and the Original Sheik versus Dick Murdoch and Kevin Sullivan at Cobo Hall in Detroit. Where is my fucking credit card?
Dude, by the end of the promo, Murdoch cut, if I had a genie and I had 3 wishes...
That's one of them.
I would use all 3 wishes to go back in time and watch Dusty and the Sheik versus Kevin Sullivan and Dick Murdoch.
Somebody please tell me this is somewhere on the WWE Network.
Oh my God, that'd be awesome.
Or on YouTube or something.
First, I want to talk about this Curtis Thompson match here with Dick Murdoch. Dick Murdoch did, like, nothing, but everything he did was awesome.
Yes.
Like, he threw stomps. And you, the fan, are probably thinking, okay, I've seen a million guys throw stomps. No, you don't understand. Dick Murdoch stomped the fuck out of this fucker. He looked awesome. He's beating him up in the ring. He's beating him up out of the ring. Finally hits his long, slow, delayed brainbuster. And Curtis Thompson, we've noted many times, is no small man.
No, this is a big jacked up dude.
He's a big jacked up dude.
He's not your usual fat, skinny, goofy jobber.
Right. He's not some guy they grabbed out of the crowd and threw a singlet on him. This guy takes stuff seriously.
Dude, the crowd would be laughing at half of these jobbers.
Yes. And Dick Murdoch, I'm watching him and I'm thinking, has there ever been a guy who's more deceptively athletic than Dick Murdoch? He's skinny fat. He's kind of thick, I guess. But he's grabbing Thompson, who is a big jacked up bodybuilder, and carrying him around.
He looks like old man strong, beer drinking, tough guy.
He's definitely beer drinking.
Yes.
No doubt about that. So they go to break and they come back for this promo.
2 promos.
It really was 2 promos and one. It's Sullivan and Murdoch. They're both plugging the Sheik match. Sullivan is awesome for a minute.
Sullivan claims that they fear no living man.
No mortal man.
No mortal man, but the Sheik is not a mortal man.
No.
Then he goes off on this insane origin story for the Sheik.
One of his lines was...
Some canon here.
He was sired by a jackal, and his mother was a madwoman.
His mother was a madwoman. She left him in the desert to die, but a she-wolf showed up and breathed the breath of life into him. Sullivan is completely insane, but he's the best.
And
second best.
A distant second at that.
Second best.
When he says this line about the she-wolf breathing life into him, the camera's a close-up on him, so you can't see Murdoch's face, but you can see his body, and his body just twitches. Like, what the fuck did this guy just say? But then Dick Murdoch speaks. So...
I hope you wrote this down.
As much as I could.
I wrote not one word down.
Mm-hmm.
I stared at the screen in awe. I thought, this has to be the best promo I've heard in at least a year. Or since, for sure, the last time we saw Dick Murdoch. And I'm not talking about, like, from the show. I'm talking, I can't remember a promo I've seen anywhere in the world in 2019. Retro Nitros with Ric Flair being Crazy Flair. These shows, obviously Raw, SmackDown. Like, I'm going to vote in the Observer Awards next year and just vote for Dick Murdoch for Best on Promos again.
Sure.
And it'll only be one, but I don't give a shit. He is the best. And he didn't turn purple.
He did not turn purple. Maybe his time off.
Weird.
His time off maybe improved his health.
Yeah.
So the announcers had very casually just mentioned that they're in Atlanta, and soon this summer in the Omni will be the Democratic National Convention here in 1988. Well, Dick Murdoch, as you can imagine, took great offense to this. Who cares, he says, about the Democratic National Convention when you're a Republican like me and you agree with everything Ronald Reagan has done for the past 8 years. And how dare you, he says, how dare you call Dusty Rhodes a living legend? Dusty's legend is crumbling. His good friends like Ronnie Garvin can't wait to jump off the ship. So he's going to go fight in Cobo Hall in Detroit, a city where they had many fights before. In fact, in a building where the Texas Outlaws won the World Tag Team titles for the first time. And in all this time, he says, Dusty Rhodes used to carry my bags, used to carry my trunks. You should still be carrying my bags. You should still be carrying my trunks. I can do the flying head scissors, he says. I can do the small packages. And all those years...
But there will be no small packages.
No.
And no flying head scissors at Cobo Hall.
There's going to be a fight in Cobo Hall. Starts talking about crazy road stories, like by the time he shot up a street sign on a bet, which I'm sure is a shoot.
I'm positive.
All these stories from the road. He says, I was the one doing all the fighting. You, Dusty Rhodes, you took the credit for it. Promises this Cobo Hall match, it's not going to be a scientific wrestling affair. It's going to be a good old-fashioned butt kicking, and you're going to get it, and we're going to administer it.
Incredible.
We need to tear down all prior halls of awesome.
It should just be called the Dick Murdoch Hall of Awesome.
The Hall of Dick Murdoch.
Except we've already given it. We've already branded it.
I understand.
But man,
he sets new standards every time I see him. He is spectacular.
I mean, it could be the Matt Cleary, Dick Murdoch Hall of Awesome, because, I mean, it is the Ric Flair Luthez Award.
I suppose.
I mean, there are two names there.
There are.
Holy fuck, this promo was absolutely astonishing.
He's yes, that's a good word.
How is he
Astonishing
not in the Observer Hall of Fame? I just don't get it.
I don't know what to tell you.
Fuck. It tarnishes the whole hall for me that he's not in there. He's that good.
Tully Blanchard and Arn Anderson versus Tommy Angel and Trent Knight. I don't know the backstory to this match. I can only assume that either they really, really like Tommy Angel, or they really, really didn't like Trent Knight, or maybe they just want to do something totally different for a change.
And by the way, I just want to mention, I don't want to hear about what a despicable person Dick Murdoch was, because if you can't put despicable people in the Wrestling Observer Hall of Fame, like,
A very short
there's
Hall of
no
Fame.
Hall of Fame, okay? You're down to a very, very small number of people.
Mm-hmm. It's pro wrestling, everyone.
In that era.
In that, well, I mean, yes.
Dude.
Yeah. So, Tommy Angel sucks, right? But they kept giving him offense. Over and over again. Even after, I want you all to think about this. At one point, Arn tried to do a drop toe hold on Tommy Angel. Now, this is something you drop down, you put one foot in front of the guy's foot and low, and the other foot behind his knee and high, and you twist. So the leverage is going to push the guy forward, right? Tommy Angel goes to his back. He broke physics trying to take a bump for this move.
Yeah.
Regardless, they kept giving him offense, and I'm baffled. I'm like, what's going on? Why are they giving Tommy Angel? Why are Tully and Arn giving Tommy Angel this, try to make him look this good? And finally, they cut him off, and he tags in Trent Knight, and Arn grabs Trent Knight and DDTs him, and he tags in Tully, and Tully pins him with a foot on the chest. That was the extent of Trent Knight's work on this night. Whew. So we go to cut a promo. Tully may have been sick. He was coughing. He already put his jacket on after this, but he still got a great promo. Says everybody has had their shot at the champs and failed. The Sting and Nikita, all these other teams they faced, everyone fails, and they always make all these excuses. The bottom line is...
Well, I got to go over his list of excuses.
All right.
He says, everyone has an excuse. If this wouldn't have happened, we would have won. If this would have happened, we would have won. Keep that in mind. The bottom line, he says, talk is cheap.
Talk is
We're
cheap.
the champions.
He holds the big shiny gold belts. This is all that matters. Arn credits Sting and Nikita. Says they gave Arn and Tully all they could handle. The bottom line is they came up 30 seconds short. Now, no one has said this, but I think the finish was a time limit draw, and somebody had a submission hold on the Horseman, and the time limit ran out. Said the Sting and Nikita had the talent, they had the desire, but Tully had too much guts. They would never quit with these belts on the line. Al Perez versus Agent Steel. What I got out of this was Gary Hart was pushing the idea of Al Perez and Ronnie Garvin as a tag team, and Al won with a toe hold.
Whoop-de-doo.
Okay. We have a Lex Luger promo. First of all, he's getting an intense mixed reaction. A lot of people hate him, but the women love him this week. Way more than they have before. So he notes the promo Dylan cut earlier about buying 100,000 copies of this. And he talks about how, you'll see the four horsemen at their best. And he sarcastically congratulates the horsemen on all their big matches. When Tully and Arn were beaten, they were just lucky the time limit expired. Barry Windham pinned a guy who had just been knocked out by his best friend. Hell of a big win. And then in that main event, he had Ric Flair in a hold that nobody has escaped from. And the only reason Lex would let go is because the ref was calling the match off. If the ref hadn't stopped him, Flair would still be in that hold. So he says, they stopped the match. No sour grapes. That's the state of Maryland, he says. There's states and cities across this country that won't stop a match like that.
All right, so one other thing real quick. So the finish was Sting had Blanchard in the Scorpion Deathlock, but Blanchard refused to quit until the time limit expired, so they retained the titles. Mm-hmm. Now, the Luger thing here. So Luger comes out here, and he's doing this promo, and he says, he literally said everything that Tully said the babyfaces do when they don't win. He's running down all of the babyfaces on the bash, and he says, well, if this wouldn't have happened, they would have won. If this would have happened, and I was just like, I couldn't even believe it. Like, I absolutely could not believe it. It was right after Tully said that everyone was going to bitch about that. And Luger came out and did that exact same thing. It was almost like they sabotaged the guy. Like, it was so weird. He did exactly seconds afterwards what Tully said the babyfaces always did.
So he says he'll do anything for another match with Ric Flair. Any match Flair wants. I'll have my hands cuffed, he says. I'll have my legs cuffed.
Bad idea.
You sign the contract. I'll kick your butt.
Fans went nuts for the guy.
They loved
There were some boos, but he also got a standing ovation, and they were super into him.
The Road Warriors destroyed Rick Allen and Gary Phelps.
Hit the Doomsday Device, and David screams, "He killed him!"
David Crockett screams, "He killed him!" They show the replay, and then Crockett goes to interview him, and he wants him to talk about this murder more. You guys killed that guy in there. Look at him.
Yep.
So,
God, David.
So watching the Road Warriors with Paul Ellering do a promo, and this is, we watched a lot of shows from a lot of different eras. I'm waiting for the Beverly Brothers to do an inset. And waiting for the Genius to say that goes for you too, Ellering. So Ellering says the Road Warriors stand tall. They will take on anyone. They make no excuses. Animal says they have proved they're the biggest, toughest, strongest team in wrestling. Someday, he says, we'll make J.J. Dillon submit in War Games. They did that the very first one. I guess they'll do it again. Then we get a Crazy Hawk promo.
Dude, this guy's out of his mind.
He was out of his mind. He says, I don't even remember the setup. He does an imitation of their opponents, and he lays down on the ground and begins to snore because they put their opponents to sleep. Then he says there's a zit on his chest that is very annoying. Just like Ronnie Garvin is very annoying. But the good thing about Ronnie Garvin is they gave him somebody new to knock out. Did anything else to add? Did
No.
I miss anything important there? The Midnight Express versus Dave Spearman and J.C. Wild.
This I will talk about. J.C. Wild was back. At least that's what it said on the screen. And he's in there, and it's a skinny guy. Doesn't look all that good, but he doesn't look terrible. And he's got gear, and he's got a new preposterous pair of wrestling boots. They're cowboy boots.
I think he got actual cowboy boots and just put them in a wrestling ring.
They've resurfaced, I'm sure, the bottom.
Okay,
they
good.
take off the dangerous stuff, put on the sole. So he's in these gimmick cowboy boots, and he's in there, and first thing that happens in the match is Eaton goes up to the guy, gives him a high five. They high five each other. I was just crying. Bobby Eaton loves to have matches with these absolute geeks.
He does.
I don't know why.
He
I actually kind of do know why. It would probably be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
They just want to go in there and see how good a squash match can we have with people that have no business being in a wrestling ring.
So when Dave Spearman proves he can properly execute an arm drag, Bobby Eaton is happy.
Well,
And he gets up and high-fives him.
so they get in there, and J.C. Wild, for like the first 10 seconds, he looks fine.
Competent.
And I said, are we sure this is J.C. Wild?
He did actually say that.
Yeah. Sorry. What's going on, Ken?
Producer Ken's phone's going off.
Oh my God. So anyway, I said, are we sure that's J.C. Wild? Because he's competent here. I thought maybe, sometimes they put the name up on the screen and it's not that guy.
It has known to happen.
They fucked this up before.
Yeah.
So I thought, it's got to be a different guy, okay? So no sooner did I think it had to be a different J.C. Wild than they whipped this fucking guy into the ropes, and he runs backwards with his arms down, and he hits the ropes totally the wrong way.
Yes.
He gets hit with something, and he takes the worst, I can't even call it a bump. He falls down.
He collapses.
Dude, fucking hideous. I couldn't figure out why he looked so good for the first 10 seconds now.
He must have practiced those 10 seconds over and over again.
I guess.
And had no idea what to do beyond that.
But dude, I mean, to be a wrestler, you got to hit the ropes and you got to bump. He could do neither of them.
No.
What's this fucking guy doing in the ring?
If you do watch this match, and I think you should because this is a fun show, if you go back and watch this match, just watch Bobby Eaton.
Oh,
Not just for what he can do as a worker, which is, of course, amazing. Just watch his reactions.
his reactions to this idiot are the best.
He has no idea what to make of J.C. Wild. There's times where he doesn't want to touch him for fear that maybe the shittiness will be contagious. His career will end.
But also, I mean, Bobby Eaton's reputation is just one of the nicest guys.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And I'm sure that Bobby Eaton, there was a part of him that thought, you know what? It was my first day once.
Yeah.
So, like, he's not like a Dr. Death where like if you fuck something up, he's just gonna kill you.
Oh no.
Like if you fuck something up with Bobby Eaton, he's gonna find it entertaining. He's gonna personally be entertained.
Yes.
And he's gonna help you up, and he's gonna try to get you through this match. Like it's amazing to watch.
You watch
Midnight
him.
Express squash matches are the best.
There's times where he will they'll throw the guy out and they'll punch him and they'll stomp him and they'll choke him and Cornette will interfere and Eaton loves to do the spot where he punches him into the microphone and makes a big noise. But when it's done, Eaton will go hold the ropes open for him and help him get back into the ring and then beat him some more.
I'm not even talking about things that you see. I'm talking about things that you don't see. Like when a guy fucks something up royally and Eaton should just like stomp on his face or something like that, but instead he lifts him up and he puts him in a headlock and he takes him over to the corner and he tags in his partner and they just keep wrestling these guys.
Yeah.
They just, it's like Eaton thinks this is the highlight of this man's career.
It might be. Yeah.
And I was also really green one day. So like, I'm going to give him a match here, no matter how shitty he is. And they are shitty.
This guy, JC Wild, is very shitty.
Yes.
And eventually they pinned him with a flapjack.
Yes. I find it, it's a word I want to use here. Endearing.
I was going to say. Yeah.
I find it endearing the way that Midnight Express treats these jobbers.
So then Jim Cornette gets a promo. He makes a lot of jokes.
Another gloating promo.
Well,
A lot of gloating on the show.
it occurred to me here.
Because there was a lot of heat at the fucking pay-per-view.
We talked about the big two matches, but Flair won, Wyndham won, Tully and Arn effectively won, and the Midnight Express won the U.S. Tag Champs.
Yes.
This was a show for the heels.
Yeah. Really, there was the Road Warriors match,
The Tower of Doom, where the good guys won by running away.
Yeah.
And then there was all a trap, so Sullivan can get his hands on Precious anyway.
And by the way, I don't know if this actually aired on, I presume it didn't, on the bash that's on the network, but the dark match, Dick Murdoch and Rick Steiner versus
Jesus
Kendall
God.
Windham and Tim Horner.
Want.
4 minutes and 35 seconds.
Now I really want.
Oh, man. Oh,
that
my
sounds
God.
fantastic.
Yep.
So Cornette's making jokes about people being wrong, one of which includes a Hiroshima joke. Always good for a laugh. Points out they have now beaten every team on the roster except one. But it's hard, he says. Hard to beat a team. Hard to beat someone when you never get a match with them.
He flat out
You
said,
know what I mean?
except one team, the World Tag Team Champions.
Yes.
He didn't say Tully and Arn, but he did mention the World Tag Team Champions won't even give the Midnights a match. Mm-hmm. And they cut away, and they come back, and it's Tommy Royal, Nikita Koloff, and the announcers spend half the match wondering if that was a challenge and analyzing the statement by Jim Cornette. It was not just a throwaway line.
No.
I liked how they did this.
Yes. Nikita beat Tommy Royal with a sickle. Then he gets a promo where he begins by shouting, "I've been thinking about it for 2 hours." And he stops and he turns to Shivani, whoever, and says, "Have I been here 2 hours?"
Tony.
Whatever.
Tony goes, about that.
Yeah. Says Sting and I are not champions, but who cares? We beat the Four Horsemen up. Ronnie Garvin, he says, has made a big mistake, and he warns Barry Windham somebody may come up from behind, maybe Nikita Koloff, and hit you. This is not a good promo,
No, it was not very good.
but it was a very good show.
But he did mention that he was there when Dusty helped Garvin win the world title, and he cannot believe that he turned his back on Dusty. That was the key to this promo in his broken English. I liked this show.
That was a very fun show.
It was a good show. Only an hour and 4 minutes if you're watching on the network. Don't miss it.
So let's get funky like a monkey.
Way first.
NWA World Championship Wrestling, July 23rd, 1988. A triple cage is lowered. And then
Why? I still don't even know
the
why.
Tower of Doom. They used this footage to
from the
explain
bash.
From the bash, but they're going to do another one in Landover.
Can you imagine they did the first one and they decided to do another one?
That actually is one strong point.
Yeah.
maybe they said we've got the kinks out of the system. It'll go better this time. I like that they plugged this match in Landover as way to sell tickets. It didn't name one person who was in it. There's a Tower of Doom. Russian Assassin and his dope music versus Trent Knight.
Oh, the music's incredible.
The Soviet Army theme or whatever this was. Tremendous. So this is cool for like a minute. The Assassin was feeling it, just chopping this dude around and smacking him and throwing beels everywhere. And then it just went forever.
I did love it, and then it just kept going.
Yeah. I looked it up.
Oh.
It went about 4 minutes.
And that's impossible.
It felt much longer.
That must have been...
But then I thought about it. 4 minutes is a typical modern Raw match. When they would go back and forth with a heat and a comeback and a finish, this is 4 minutes of just a guy beating a guy.
It was a very, very long 4 minutes.
Yeah. There was more of that. That was the theme of the show, really. Matches that went much longer than they needed to.
The assassin is I don't know how tall he really is, but he sure is big.
6'6", probably, somewhere in there.
And he won with the Russian guillotine, the Shinanumaki, they called it.
That's what Jim Ross called it.
I'm going to start stealing that. I've used a couple of wrestling terms when teaching jujitsu, like the goozle. I'll say, someone may try to goozle you, and they look at me like I'm nuts.
I hope you teach it.
What's a goozle?
I hope you teach them the goozle.
I'm like, how do you not know what a goozle is? You just goozle somebody. I'm going to teach you the Shinanumaki. It's going to be the new name for the guillotine. Yeah, I loved it.
Yeah. So they do a promo, which is actually interesting. Paul Jones, first of all, he says, the Road Warriors will meet their Waterloo, and the Russian assassin will cut their water off.
I don't know what that means.
I don't think he knows what Waterloo actually is.
No.
Or who was there or what happened. So then he adds, if they do not finish the Road Warriors off, then Ivan and the assassin are both gone.
Yeah. So that's a serious threat.
It is, actually. Ivan...
You missed the part where, before they get in all of that...
I did, yes. I'm sorry.
Ivan says, the Russian assassin would like to say some words. So the Russian assassin actually spoke what appeared to be a made-up language.
I heard definitely some Spanish in there.
It sounded like half Spanish. I don't know what it was supposed to be, but there was no way it was a real language.
Probably not, no.
It was ridiculous. And literally, he only said like a sentence in his made-up language, and you just hear women in the crowd howling with laughter. How ridiculous this is.
Yes. So Ivan, after being told his job with Paul Jones is in jeopardy, he goes on a tangent about how terrible things are all over the world. People are starving all over the world. People are being neglected of different things. And that's how we feel, he says.
Hungry, I guess.
Neglected? He's trying to play the victim somehow, to throw himself at Paul Jones' mercy. He's rambling on and on. This went as long as the match
all
did.
You need to know is Ivan Koloff, who is a good talker, he rambled on for so long that Paul Jones finally had to leap in and cut him off and finish the interview for him because he wouldn't stop talking. Paul Jones did this.
Yes. Says, I will look like a fool if the Warriors are not done, but they will be done. The Fantastics versus Tommy Royal and Chris Champion's amazing mullet.
Yeah.
Halfway down his back.
He looked like a woman in a Def Leppard video.
He looked like Jane Child, actually. That's an 80s reference for you. Mullet halfway down his back, hair spiked 3 or 4 inches above his head, and long bangs.
Even by 80s mullet standards, this was ridiculous.
This was ridiculous.
I mean, this was ridiculous.
And I know he was supposed to be from the future, from 2005 or whatever. In 2005, this was even more ridiculous.
Yeah, you see Crush. He's got a ridiculous mullet.
Not like this.
But if Crush would have seen Chris Champion, he would have howled.
He would have.
He would have made fun of his terrible haircut.
No mention, by the way, that Chris Champion was once in the New Breed.
Nope.
And a name guy. Now he's just on the jobber team. Now it was an interesting match because when we
had 2 Tommies in one match. Why does this always happen on this show?
That's true. There were 2 Tommies in this match and another in the next one.
Yeah. Why can't we change someone's name if they're just a nothing happening jobber?
I don't know. When Tommy Royal was in there, it was a squash. When Chris Champion was in, it was competitive.
Because Chris Champion looked like a wrestler and wrestled like a wrestler.
He had charisma. He had hair. That's for sure.
Tommy Royal was the exact opposite. Immensely fat.
He did not look like a wrestler. He
No.
did not carry himself like a wrestler.
No.
So I'm thinking, okay. They go back and forth for a while, and there's tags by both teams, and they're in there with Tommy Royal, who, as we noted, did not look like a wrestler, and he was the jobber. And you think, okay, they will lay him out and hit the rocket launcher and win. Instead, Fulton grabs a front face lock. He tags in Rogers. Rogers ducks behind Royal, does a schoolboy, and gets the win.
Yeah.
And part of me thinks that Royal was actually not supposed to stay down. Like, he forgot to kick out, and they just went with it.
You know, I mentioned this before, but I don't remember where I heard it. It was years and years ago that anytime you hear anything in this country that has any royal connotation, Burger King,
It's actually not that
King's
impressive.
Table,
Yeah.
it's always just horrible. We got Tommy Royal.
Well,
It just continues on.
it does. It does.
Tommy Royal. He sucked. And it was a funny finish. Literally, he went from a headlock to a cradle and was pinned. That was the end of the match.
Yeah.
Just like that.
Ron Garvin versus Tommy Angel.
Our third Tommy in 2 matches.
Yes. Ron Garvin is now a heel, wrestles the exact same match.
Yes.
Just smiles less, I guess. Just beat the crap out of this guy. Almost pants him at one point.
He pulled on his flabby skin and pinched him.
He grabbed a front face lock and did a pinch flurry.
Yes.
Where he grabbed all 4 fingers to the palm of his hand and started yanking on his skin and pulling it from the side.
Yep.
It was really weird.
The announcer said, you know what, if the money was right, Ron Garvin would probably turn on Gary Hart. And I thought, you know what? You're right.
And soon,
If
spoiler,
if this is the story,
Yeah.
then all you have to do is find a higher bidder.
that's what I said last week. Dusty should
Yes.
just buy Garvin back.
Yes. Well, when someone turns on you like that, Vinny, you don't really want to pay him a lot of money.
That's fair.
You know what I'm saying?
That's
But
fair.
somebody should come along and say, Garvin, I'll give you $1 more.
Well,
You take out that Gary Hart.
spoiler, everyone. That's basically what Vince McMahon did. Soon. So, yes, he puts him in an abdominal stretch and slaps him in the face repeatedly. So, here's the big difference between babyface Ron Garvin and heel Ron Garvin. Babyface Ron Garvin would do the big right hand, the punch of death, then the Garvin stomp, and then pin him. Garvin did the big right hand, then pinned him, and then did the Garvin stomp after the match. Evil bastard.
You know, this was the Garvin that we saw before he became champion. And we thought, why did everyone hate when he was a champion?
Mm-hmm.
And now we see this Garvin after he was the champion. But we never saw this Ron Garvin when he was the champion.
No.
He was like Dean Ambrose.
That's a very good comparison,
Thank
actually.
you. Thank you very
I had
much.
not thought of it, but yes. A guy who is great all the time, except when he is the world champion.
Then he was terrible.
And he was terrible then. So we get a Gary Hart promo. First, it starts off, it's like a cliched, it's good, but a cliched wrestling promo. My man's tough. He prevented Dusty Rhodes from winning the U.S. title. Everyone else talks about what they're going to do. We do what we're going to do, and then we talk about it afterwards. And Ronnie Garvin and Al Perez are a great team. Dr. Death, you want to stick your nose in, we'll take care of you too. And then he turns on Dusty, and he loses his mind.
First he says, Dr. Death, who've you ever killed?
I missed that line.
Not who'd you ever beat. Dr. Death, who you ever killed?
Well, that was the start of the insanity in this promo then.
He called Dusty, and I quote, a great big ugly hog.
Called him that. He said you are
Texas trash.
You are Texas trash. So okay, that's a promo. Your mom is trash. Okay, that's classic fighting words. Then he says, your daddy died at 42 years old drunk in a ditch.
That's some serious fighting words
Whoa.
right there. Yeah.
I don't know if that's true or not. Either way, wow. Calls him Texas trash over and over again. All I can think is, isn't Al Perez from Texas? Isn't
Yeah,
Gary
but-
from Texas?
They're not Texas trash.
I see.
Big difference.
I mean, Texas is big.
Yes. Well, it doesn't matter how big it is. You can have Bothell trash. I'm
I've
talking
seen
about
that.
myself.
I've seen that quite a few times.
Yeah, there's some Bothell trash.
Yes. So
This was a fucking astoundingly great promo.
it was
Like,
astounding.
at this point, my favorite promos. I mean, he is number 2 right now. He is ranking above JJ and Ric Flair right now in the promo department, and Jim Cornette. Jim Cornette's a great talker. He's not a great promo to me on these shows like the other guys. Dick Murdoch
Dick Murdoch's above him.
is
yes.
number 1.
Yes.
And Gary Hart's number 2. Flair and JJ are number 3. And Cornette is a great talker is probably number 4. That's my hierarchy of great talkers here on this program.
Well, speaking of Cornette, he and the Midnight Express come out.
This was a great promo.
David Crockett says there's rumors on the street that Cornette wants a shot at the world tag team titles. No shit. Shouldn't every guy on the roster want a shot at the world
Call
tag team
last
titles?
week on your own show, you jackass.
That also happened. So Cornette starts dropping little hints and bordering on backstage lingo. He says, giving us a title shot, it might violate dressing room politics, and maybe the promoters just don't want to break up any friendships. And hey, we don't want to break up any friendships either. Because the truth of the matter is, Bobby Eaton and Arn Anderson are best friends. And it took a little convincing on my part to convince Bobby to issue this challenge to Tully and Arn for the World Tag Team titles. But here's the other thing. We have been waiting. We've been the U.S. champions all told for 6 months. They just won these titles back. There was a break in the middle. But for 6 months, we've been champions. Tully and Arn have been world champions for 9 months. And we keep waiting for somebody else to beat them so we can challenge that team. But nobody can do it because nobody can beat Tully and Arn except us. Says the Horsemen are the best collection of individual wrestlers in the world, but the Midnight Express are the greatest tag team in the world. Says the contracts are signed, they've been put in the mail, we've done our part, we're just waiting for J.J. Dillon to sign them and send them back. And he promises, with a big snarky grin, after this match, out of the goodness of our hearts, we'll still be friends. And anyway, titles wouldn't get in the way of true friendships, and if you weren't true friends, it's not like you guys would buddy up to us just to avoid a title defense.
It was an awesome promo.
It was awesome. Here's why it was awesome, and this whole thing is awesome. It gets more throughout the show. This is all totally realistic. In that, these guys do share a dressing room, which the old jargon for they're
the heels.
They're all bad guys. Yes.
Yeah.
And bad guys very rarely fought other bad guys at this time. So they're all sharing the same dressing room. At the same time, of course, everyone wants to be world champions. Of course, the Midnights are going to say the Horsemen have been ducking them. Of course, the Midnights are going to point out we have been U.S. champions. We never got a title shot for those half a year. We had this belt had these belts. But they're acknowledging all the unspoken relationships between wrestlers, and the backstage view of Arn and Bobby being best friends, which has never been a thing on this show at all. They've never been on camera together. But the on-camera stuff of we're all heels, we never fight each other, and why is that? And he talked about it, and he explained it, and it all made sense. And at the same time, while it made sense, he also made it clear that he, James E. Cornette, thought it was bullshit. This is great. Al Perez and David Isley.
This was not great.
Not great.
I referred to Isley as a flob. I think I was trying to say a fat slob.
He was a flop.
But after I said it, I realized it's a good word.
He's
flob.
a flop. Now, that being said, there was a point where he, right at the finish, he whips Al into the corner, and he charges, and Al's supposed to dodge and then go to the finish. Al, forgot to dodge, or he was slow. So David Isley's charging at him, has to throw on the brakes, and then charge into the corner. So, that wasn't even the finish. That was the middle of the match, because then Al took him outside and slammed him on the floor like it was his fault. And finally, Al won with a toe hold. Dusty Rhodes did a promo. They never do this. They do promos in the studio. Sometimes they will do promos from the arena. And sometimes they will do promos from a different TV show they have in front of a different backdrop. I don't know where Dusty was. He couldn't be in his places.
He's just somewhere.
Just had a drop cloth behind him.
They
a plain
just
drop
set up
cloth.
a little studio, and they gave him a mic, and he cut a generic promo.
It was the dream.
Yeah, he said that he's going to get funky like a monkey on Ronnie Garvin.
This was Dusty Rhodes' chance to get revenge on his lifelong friend, his student, Barry Windham, only to be turned on by another dear friend. And he cuts a generic Dusty Rhodes promo. It sounded like 200 other Dusty Rhodes promos I've seen. Only mentioned Garvin in passing at the end. He's going to drop him on his head. When Gary Hart talks about family, that's when injuries happen. And he promises to get funky like a monkey. Yeah, that's left a lot to be desired. The Rock and Roll Express versus Agent Steel and George South.
This was very much like the opening match,
Yes.
where for like 2 minutes I was really liking it.
It just went forever.
It was like the Rock and Rolls are in there with George South, who's very good, and they're doing a bunch of spots. They're doing spots with George South, doing all this stuff. It's looking good. I'm thinking, man, this is a fun match. And then Agent Steel gets in there, and it's not even his fault, but the Rock and Rolls cut him off, and they start working over his leg. And they work over his leg, and they stomp on it, and they twist it, they tag in and out, they're working over his leg, they work over his leg. We're going on 5 minutes here.
This did go 5 minutes.
They're working over his fucking leg, and then finally, after working over his leg the entire match, they stand him up and do a double drop kick and pin him.
Yes.
So when this show was, remember when it was like 90 minutes the last few weeks? It was an hour on our WWE network.
Yeah,
that was a lot better.
It was.
This 2-hour show, everybody has to get in there and just waste my time.
There was a lot of time wasted on this show.
Yes, this match did not need to go. This match did not need to go 5 minutes.
They had
you hear me?
They had a fine 2-minute match that took 5 minutes.
Then they cut a promo. They brought up the Midnight's Challenge.
See, this again. Everyone on the show has a reaction to this because this is a new thing. The Midnight's Challenge and the Horsemen is news. It has shaken the entire tag team division.
Well, they're all tag teams.
Yeah, because if the Midnight's getting a shot, that means everyone else on the ladder gets bumped down a rung, and the Rock and Rolls are pissed about this.
Rock and Roll say, we're back here. They keep mentioning they're back here in the NWA. It's like their new contract. That was a stipulation. You got to mention how great it is to be back here in the NWA. They're back here in the NWA for 2 reasons. All the great fans that wrote so many letters asking for them to come back.
Yes.
Makes it sound like they were banned. Fans started a letter writing campaign. And they're here to win the NWA tag team titles for the 5th time.
That's right.
They don't care who wins this feud. They'll take on either team. This was all Ricky, by the way.
Of course.
Yeah, Robert stood there.
The Road Warriors versus J.C. Wild and Rick Allen.
Main man, J.C. Wild. I was waiting to see him get in there with the Road Warriors. And it took till the very end. But goddamn, J.C. Wild got his moment in the sun with Hawk and Animal. And they whipped him into the ropes.
It was really just one whip into the ropes.
You know what's funny is, like, I can't sit here and say he hasn't learned how to run the ropes yet. Okay?
I can.
Well, I mean, he hasn't. But the point is, like, it's not easy to learn how to run the ropes.
Fair.
It's hard.
Fair.
Okay. But he has no clue how to run the ropes. Even if you don't know how to do the steps or turn or which foot to plant or any of that, you still know that your fucking arm goes over that top rope. This jackass has both arms down by his sides, and he runs backwards into the ropes. He's been here like 3 weeks now.
It's not even that. It's partly that.
That's a big thing. After 3 weeks, nobody has told him to hold on to the top rope when you hit the ropes.
And you say he looks like he's never been taught to run the ropes. He looks like he's never been taught to run.
Well,
like, the Animal throws him in, and he's trying to count his steps, and he stops. It's subtle. It's not like he comes to a complete halt and time freezes, but like he throws on the brakes with one step and then tries to lunge with the next one and bounces back. He's still all herky-jerky, and he gets like booted. And they say, "Screw this, we're done." And I don't know if it's his fault or they just didn't want to do the Doomsday Device clothesline this week. But
they didn't want to kill him this week.
Yeah, and Animal pinned him with an avalanche power slam instead.
Yeah,
which is actually cool. That's the only time I've ever seen him do that move. We get a Road Warriors promo. They too are outraged.
Well, they're justifiably outraged.
Even more so than Rock and Rolls.
They bring up the point that where do you get your stats, Midnights, that you're the number 1 contenders? They say you've claimed to have beaten everybody. You never beat us.
That's right. And they say if you buy any wrestling magazine, he should have said After Magazine.
He should have had some.
Yeah, you will see. We are ranked as the top contenders, not you.
Yeah.
You've never beat us. The Horsemen have never beat us. Neither of you ever will.
You know what's funny about this promo, too, is if they're right, why is there? Why are the Road Warriors ranked above the Midnight Express if they're the U.S. Tag Team Champions?
I don't have an answer to that. It was always very inconsistent. The After magazines always would have the U.S. champion ranked number 1, but I don't think they did the same thing with the U.S. tag champs.
Maybe the U.S. champion was just the champion, but the Road Warriors would be the number 1 contenders, but the U.S. tag champs were just automatically the number 1. You know what I'm saying?
That's what Cornette would argue.
Sure.
It doesn't matter what some journalist says.
No, I'm just saying, like, if you are the U.S. champion, like, by default, you're the number 1 contender.
Yes.
But you're listed as the champion, so then below that, you've got to have, like, the number 1 contender, number 2 contender. So the Road Warriors, as number 1 contenders, are actually number 2 contenders because they're not champions.
I guess.
You know what I'm saying? I'm trying to look at this logically because they do.
Sure.
If I were Jim Cornette, how would I explain this?
Because they have shiny belts, the Road Warriors don't.
Yeah, you're the number 1 contenders, but we're the U.S. champions, so we are first in line.
Well, okay.
Contendership don't even matter.
We get a crazy Hawk promo in which Road Warrior Hawk says he wakes up every day and hopes to be a Neo Maxi Zoom dweeby.
Yeah. That's like a Shinonumaki.
Because everyone else is a slug or a clamhead or a moron or Ronnie Garvin. Did I mention this was a weird promo?
And then Ellering addresses Paul Jones.
Paul Ellering.
Yeah, and he Mentions the aces and eights.
Says Paul Jones, you don't need me to make a fool out of you. You're doing a fine job by yourself. And talks about being a Judgment Man's character by the way he plays poker, and Ronnie Garvin has the dead man's hand in his poker. And they say Dusty's their friend and partner, and they won't leave him with Ronnie behind his back.
So they're leaving, and David Crockett turns to the camera and he says, "True friends of the American Dream, Dusty Rhodes." Foreshadowing.
It is a pattern, isn't it?
Yes.
Mike Rotunda versus Gary Phelps with the World Television Championship title at stake. So, Brian, the bell rang.
I left.
You got stuff to do. You left. What you missed?
Nothing. There's no way I missed anything.
Rick Steiner gets on the apron. Mike Rotunda tags him in. Rick hits a big clothesline. The ref's looking at him right there. Rick tags out and leaves, and the match continues.
Let me guess. Teddy Long.
Teddy Long was the referee.
How did I know that? He was the prototype for Nick Patrick, a bumbling nincompoop that eventually they made the head of SmackDown.
Gary Phelps.
Which is still a very controversial decision in my mind.
Gary Phelps, if you're listening to me, you were screwed here. Mike Rotunda should have been disqualified for outside interference. You should have a win.
Dude, this Teddy Long didn't disqualify anybody for fucking anything.
You should have a win over the World Television Champion on your record.
No. You got to understand what you're getting into the ring with. If I were Mike Rotundo and I saw that Teddy Long was the ref, I'd have tagged in Rick Steiner too and not worried one bit about it.
So Sullivan and Steiner argue with the announcers about whether or not this is against the rules, and Rotunda wins with a butterfly suplex. So the Varsity Club do a promo.
Okay. So Sullivan does one of his crazy promos about the Sheik match in Detroit, okay? And he's listing all of these crazy things that he's done in his life. These include, he went to the Temple of Abu-Dhabi and begged for forgiveness. He ate monkey brains with the lepers. And he got Patty away from Jimmy Garvin.
That was in there.
He ranked all these things together.
And then he said, quote, "I have done every possible task that's impossible."
Yes.
What?
That's why he's the task master.
I hadn't thought of that.
Yes.
That actually makes perfect sense.
Yes.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
He talks about cleaning out every bar in Daytona Beach and says his war with Dusty will end in Detroit.
Now he says it's common knowledge that the Sheik's mother was a mad woman.
And he was sired by a jackal.
I guess because he mentioned it last week, it is now common knowledge. I Googled Sheik's mother, Mrs. Farhat. I couldn't find anything. All I know is they emigrated here, and he was well-liked and a good boy in high school. Then I guess it went wrong afterwards. But what I read, it didn't sound like his mother was a mad woman.
Did it mention his dad being a jackal?
Did not mention that. No.
Before Sullivan spoke, by the way, Rotunda cut a promo in which there's always been a wacky tension between Rotunda and Steiner. Now Rotunda's openly burying him. He's not worth much, he says. He's up and coming. We don't know where he's going. He calls out all those challengers, says they don't make losers at Syracuse, and he'll beat Doc in his hometown. And then Sullivan went on his tirade. We had Tully Blanchard versus Ryan Wagner. The announcers are again talking about how Arn and Bobby are friends, but, they say, neither Stan nor Bobby likes Tully Blanchard very much. There's depth to this. It's a complex web of relationships. Tully wins with the slingshot suplex. So Tully, Arn, and JJ cut a promo.
Oh, what a great promo.
This is the first time JJ's been here to address what everyone has been talking about in the whole show, Jim Cornette. And JJ's a little flustered. He's kind of laughing about it. He says, "Listen, we've all been busy. I've been on the road. I know I'm a little behind in my mail. Maybe Jim Cornette's behind in his mail, and maybe the mail's behind him. Maybe he hasn't gotten his allowance check from his mama lately. Maybe his allowance check is late, so he's blowing off steam, but he can't really be serious. He can't really want a match with Tully Blanchard and Arn Anderson." And he says all this. He dismisses Cornette as a joke. He dismisses the Midnight Express as a threat to Tully and Arn, and then says, "But they are a great tag team." So we go to Arn Anderson. He stresses, he and Bobby Eaton, it's true, they are best friends. He is overjoyed at Eaton's success. And Bobby Eaton, he says, be happy with your success. Savor that moment. Don't take outside the men and rambling and take it as your own thoughts. Don't wish for the gold. Be happy with the money and success you've got, and keep our friendship intact.
Man, what a guilt trip.
You did.
And then they go to Tully, who, by the way, it has been noted, he doesn't get along with everybody.
Does not like Stan and Bobby. They don't like him.
Yes. Yeah. So it's actually not even his fault. David Crockett has to stir up shit. And he says, those World Tag Team titles got to be worth at least 3 times what those U.S. Tag Team titles are worth. And Tully just looks at the camera and he says, well, all I know is we don't stay in no $8 hotels. He walks off. I thought, no wonder these motherfuckers hate this guy. What a cock.
That's why everyone hates him.
But it was great.
It was great.
When it was done, I was salivating for this match.
This was awesome. Yeah.
Okay. This Dale Lapperouse thing, it's got to be a rib.
The name has a different name every week.
Every single week they spelled this goofy name differently.
It was Lapey Rouse today.
This week it was Lapey Rouse.
Yes.
I can't figure out if they don't know how to spell it or if it's like, let's just spell it funny every week. Let's make it more preposterous each week. He faces Barry Windham, and there was a claw finish.
Superplex, lariat, claw. He got all his moves in there. And then he and JJ cut generic promos. Dylan says Barry's the undisputed champion.
Oh, this was not generic. JJ is now agitated.
I see.
Quit trying to cloud this issue by talking about Ronnie Garvin. He's done what few men have done.
He pinned Dusty Rhodes.
Dusty Rhodes with the claw.
Pinned him with a claw, the most dangerous weapon in all of wrestling. He didn't need Garvin's help. Garvin was just part of the plan. So JJ does his piece, and Barry does his piece, brags about being the undisputed champion. And as they're going to leave, Dylan has to come back and say, I need to talk more about Ronnie Garvin. Says Ronnie Garvin's a wild card. And we've already got 4 aces. You don't need a wild card. Garvin was just insurance that we didn't really need. Lex Luger versus Keith Steinborn.
God, Keith Steinborn can't even go for a rack.
Lex Luger is really, really big and strong.
Luger lifts him up like for a back suplex and then transitions that into the rack. Which actually was very impressive given this numbskull.
Given that Keith Steinborn totally deadweighted him.
Yeah.
I seen Lex Luger get the giant up in a torture rack with less difficulty than he got Keith Steinborn up this week.
Yeah.
But he's mighty.
Because it's fake.
Him. I realize that.
When you're an idiot.
You know what? It's fake.
Not fake.
It's fake for Keith Steinborn, too.
No, it's not, Vinny. It's a shoot for this numbskull.
It actually was. So Lex cuts a promo. He is booed way more than he's cheered this week. He says he had Flair in a hold that nobody has escaped from. If the ref hadn't tapped him on the shoulder, Flair would have been in that hold till Christmas time. And one way or another, he's going to get his hands on Ric Flair. He's destined to be the next world champ. Now, this is interesting. I forgot about this, to mention this. So, they're still doing Luger and Flair around the loop. Luger and Flair are still main eventing every show, with the theory being there won't be a blood stoppage because you're not in stupid Baltimore. So, other matches that are going on here, Ronnie Garvin turns, so now it's Ronnie versus Dusty's the program. But this has left Barry Windham with nothing to do. There's no obvious challenger for Barry. He's still talking about Dusty. He's still talking about Ronnie. Now, in 2019, a program like this would do a Windham, Garvin, Dusty 3-way. They didn't do that in 1988.
Come on, not a 3-way.
So
ridiculous.
Windham right now is just floating. So Lex finishes his promo, and David Crockett then says, World Champion Ric Flair will be wrestling next.
Yeah, what a lie.
Boy, was it a lie.
Instead, we got Sting, Dr. Death, who has never killed anybody, Nikita Koloff, the fake Russian, against Larry Stevens, the Green Hornet from last week, and Cruel Connection number 2. Where was Cruel Connection number 1?
I don't know.
Like, they just didn't have the costume? Like, Cruel Connection number 2 was around. Cruel Connection number 1 was on the loop.
A prior engagement.
But the fucking Green Hornet's available.
Yes.
2 green guys, by the way. Because Cruel Connection number 2 is also green.
Yeah.
Green Hornet's green. Green Hornet's green and fat. Cruel Connection is just green. And it's just a match. Goes on forever.
The only thing of note.
No, the highlight, Vinny.
Okay.
When Sting throws the big Okada dropkick, and the camera is in just such a position that you can see that he misses Cruel Connection number 2 by a good 3-4 inches.
Yeah.
Fucking Cruel Connection goes flying.
There was that.
He flies his ass outside the ring. I howled. This was not shown on the replay.
No, it's not shown on the replay. What I was going to say was the highlight was the match begins. Nikita's in there with somebody, and he grabs a face lock, and he goes to his corner. And I don't know what Sting said, but Sting cracked Nikita up big. Nikita's laughing out loud. He tags in Sting, and maybe Sting just told Nikita what I'm going to do. Because Sting grabs this jobber, whichever one it was. He grabs like he's going to do a German suplex. And then he lifts him like 6 inches off the ground, like he's going to do a deadlift German suplex. And he holds him there, and he holds him, and he holds him, and he holds him, and he's standing there, nothing's happening, and then he takes him to his own corner, and he puts him down, and the guy tags out. That was Sting's spot.
Yeah.
Sting is awesome.
This is the good old days.
This is the good old days.
I don't give a shit what anybody says.
This is the good old days.
It was better then.
I'm going to do shit that I make up on the spot here on live or on national TV.
I'm going to crack myself up.
Yes. Watch, Nikita. I'm going to hold this guy. The Spam Slam of the Week.
How long do you think I can hold him up for?
That may have been it, yeah. The Road Warriors hit the double impact on a guy, and as Shivani noted, gave him a gigantic flip.
Yeah.
The main event.
Great match.
Ric Flair versus Curtis Thompson.
Loved it.
Do you want to talk about it more?
Nah, I just wish Ric Flair would wrestle on TV against a different jobber every week. Because he's not like every other guy that goes in there and just shows off and beats the hell out of the guy. He goes in and has a match. It's not a competitive match, but he locks up, gives the guy a headlock.
It has a beginning, a middle, and an end.
Yep. Gets some heat. I mean, the heat was...
Every other match in the show was the end for 5 minutes.
I can practically remember this entire match. It was like, lock up, he gave the guy a headlock, pushed him off, tackle. Looked at his great strength. Then gives the guy another headlock, does a reversal, but the guy's too strong. He gets stuck in the headlock again. So, then he goes for the old test of strength, but as soon as he grabs his fingers, he boots him in the gut and chops him. Gets a little bit of heat, and then sets up the figure 4 spot.
There was no comeback.
There was no comeback. You kidding me? Curtis Thompson doing a comeback on Ric Flair? Mm-hmm. Not happening. Man, I loved it.
So, as Dylan starts his promo after the match, they cut to some women who, like, we're supposed to believe they look at Ric Flair and all start clapping.
Yes.
But we can't hear anything. There's only like a dozen people in there. We can hear everything they make. Do they take women reacting to Luger and edit this in?
No, I don't think so.
It's weird. Dylan says it's an honor to have the world champion Ric Flair wrestling on this program. I'm sure
I'll say.
The TV...
I was honored.
I'm sure we'll get great TV ratings for having the world champion here. And speaking of demand, every promoter in the country is trying to get Flair Luger 2, trying to get this rematch booked. And says they are in the driver's seat. They can let the promoters bid against each other and get all the big money and the perks they want. And Flair talks about this, how they're in charge because they're the champions. David Crockett hates paying, Jim Crockett hates paying them $1 million a year. He hates paying Tully Blanchard $1 million a year. Hates paying Arn Anderson $1 million a year, but he has to because we're the best.
Interesting to know that the world champion is paid the same salary as the world tag team champions.
He may have been rounding.
Could have been, yeah.
I
presume there's more money on top of that.
Probably didn't want to say $1.3 million. Oh, that's probably just the downside. Yeah.
That's their downside guarantee.
Yeah. And if Lex wants a rematch, he'll have to kiss me where the sun doesn't shine. That was Retro NWA.
Saved by that main event, I thought.
Good stuff for the Midnight Express. A lot of really boring squashes.
You're gonna be mine all night long.
About that later, but first off, NWA here.
Yes, we watched NWA World Championship Wrestling from July 30th, 1988. We opened with clips of Dr. Death saving Sting from a Varsity Club beatdown, but then when he goes to pick Sting up, Kevin Sullivan hits Doc from behind, and Doc knocks Sting out of the ring. The Rock and Roll Express versus Agent Steel and Gary Phelps.
It's goddamn music. There should have been the music. You know what's funny is, like, they're supposed to be young, hip rock and rollers.
That was the plan.
Okay. Where's Cliff's song again? Let me find it here. Like, this is what they should have come out to here. You know what I'm saying?
That's been a big hit in 19... Oh, Metallica existed, yeah.
This is the rock and roll. This is what the Rock and Roll Express should have come out to. Some rock and roll, baby, right?
This is very angry music from Ricky and Robert.
It is angry, but I mean, the point is, it's rock and roll, right?
Sure.
fucking song they came out to.
Honky Tonk.
Dude, no, it's not even that. It was like, it sounds like Mae Young and Moolah's music.
Yes.
Like two old fogies should come out to this music. Like, they wouldn't have come out to this music at Black Label Pro.
No.
Too ridiculous. But they came out to it here on this show. I was disgusted that neither of them put their foot down on this stupid song. Play some rock.
They did not play rock. They played rockabilly, maybe. That's the best you could describe it. So the story here is...
It's an insult to rockabilly.
The music or the guy?
Definitely not the guy. I mean, but the music. It's something out of a I can't even say like a honky tonk, a hurdy-gurdy. Like someone's turning a fucking thing to play this song. That's what this was. It's ridiculous.
You are simultaneously so smart and so dumb.
It's ridiculous.
It is ridiculous.
Thank you.
So the story here is they keep comparing the Rock and Roll Express to the Fantastics and also the Fantastics to the Rock and Roll Express.
Oh, sounds like a clash is coming.
This is an ongoing story, which we'll get into here, but they were talking about it a lot, about how these two teams are very similar and both are very popular. Now, I did the research here. They actually, in 1985, there was a four corners, four-team match with the Rock and Roll Express, the Midnight Express, the Fantastics, and the Guerreros against each other.
Wow.
So I didn't watch it because I was watching this show.
That sounds incredible.
But there may have been a Fantastic.
Why the hell didn't you tell me that for the potpourri instead of what we watched?
That would have been better.
You could have called an audible.
I guess I could.
Or added it.
I forgot about it until right now. So Agent Steel was okay.
Dude, he was remarkably competent. I think they put a different guy under the mask.
Entirely possible.
I think they put one of the new breed under there.
Unfortunately, they cannot put anybody under Gary Phelps' mask.
He was horrible.
He was horrible.
Just freezes when he's tagged in. Robert hits him with a big boot.
A big boot from Robert Gibson.
Yeah. And then one of my great regrets in life is I didn't get to take the double drop kick.
Yeah.
Because Robert's knee was messed up.
Yeah.
So it was a sunset flip, and Robert held my legs.
Right.
Fucking cheating, by the way.
Sure.
Not only the fact that I was the illegal man and Ricky was the illegal man, but you can't have two illegal people in the ring and then the third guy holding the fucking guy's legs down.
Was Nick Patrick your ref?
It may have been. He may have been. But anyway, great regret is I didn't take that move. But this fucking Gary Phelps got to take the double drop kick. And how did he take it, mind you? He ran at them. They began to jump for the double drop kick. And so he jumped at the same time before they touched him. He jumps into the double drop kick.
Yes.
Of course, it's fake, so they don't really drop kick him. So he barely rotates when they hit him.
He just kept going forward.
And he lands flat on his ass. His neck snaps back, probably ends up with spinal stenosis, and he gets pinned. It was horrible.
It was like he was trying to knock them out of the ring by taking their double drop kick.
Yeah, he failed. Everyone failed.
Everyone failed.
God damn it.
And they cut a quick promo, the Rock and Roll Express do, and by that I mean Ricky Morton. They don't care if the Midnight Express beat the Horsemen or the Horsemen beat the Midnight Express. They want the winners either way. Dr. Death versus David Isley.
I don't have much to say about this except Ross described the Oklahoma Stampede as, quote, that power move of his. I thought he described his finish.
Well, it is.
I mean, it is.
It is the power move.
It seems it should
it's
be
his.
It should be ranked higher than that.
She could have found a more creative way to describe it.
Yeah.
Doc was a hell of an athlete. I mean, breaking news here in 2019. Hell of a rope runner, great drop kick.
Oh, there was one other thing. He did an arm yanker.
He did.
Where the guy falls on the ground and you grab his arm and you put your feet on his lats and his shoulder and you just yank on his arm.
Pull his arm off.
Which is, in fact, I saw this as a shoot at CMLL Dos Leyendas like 3 weeks ago when El Terrible dislocated his shoulder and the referee ran out of the ring and did this move to him to try to put his shoulder back in the socket. Legit.
Did it work? Because that sounds agonizingly painful.
It did not work. He tried it, and the doctor tried it, and his partner tried it. This move.
Yeah.
It was the funniest and saddest thing I've ever seen.
That sounds awful.
Yes.
Well,
So maybe Dr. Death was trying to help David Isley.
I guess so. There was a point here where he's doing like the standing toe hold, where he's just twisting the guy's leg, and Isley is twisting his body the other way to crank the hold in deeper. It goes on for a while, and then Doc hit the football tackle and that power move of his and won.
I do love that if you think about a heel hook in jiu-jitsu, like the whole idea is you use your legs to control your opponent's legs so that when you hook the heel, there's nowhere for them to go.
Sure.
This standing leg twist, you stand on the ground and you hold onto their foot and you twist it. Why wouldn't they just go that way?
Well, you'd have to ask David Isley.
They just lay there, or, like this idiot, they try to roll the other way.
The other way. You roll against the tension.
God, it's almost like it's fake. It's ridiculous.
So Doc gets a promo, and David Crockett's there trying to interview him. He tries to talk about Mike Rotunda wrestling Sting. It all started, he said, when Mike Rotunda was wrestling Sting. And Doc, like a bulldozer, just barrels right through this question. Let's put that belt down, he says. And Crockett is taking it back. He's looking around for help, like, what do I do? Doc says, Kevin Sullivan, you were jumping on my friends. You're jumping on me.
You jumped on this bone.
Oh, I missed that part.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
That's what he said.
Says, I am the craziest man in this business. You call yourselves the varsity club. You don't know what it takes to be in the varsity team. And the clip starts that opened the show. David Crockett's trying to introduce it, but Doc just won't let him. What do we got here, he says. See where they're jumping on me? Says now they've got his attention. He's not a hard man to find. He storms off.
I love that they wrote out the word doctor. He was Dr. Death.
It's never DR period death.
No.
Doctor death.
Yes. Just in case you can't figure out what the DR stands for.
Ron Garvin and Barry Windham versus Dale Lapey Rouse and Tommy Angel.
You know how much money I would pay to see like a long, live Ron Garvin Dale Lapey match?
A lot of money?
Beat the shit out of this guy.
Yeah.
He unrepentantly bullied him. He chopped him. He just destroyed. It was glorious. And then Barry tagged in, and he's a professional.
Yes.
I mean, Ron's a professional too, but he's a different kind. You know, Barry just does like a regular squash. I was just so mad. I wanted to see more of Ron Garvin killing Dale Lapey. It was so great.
The funniest thing to me, two things. One involves Garvin. He, at one point, will often say the so-and-so chopped the guy to the floor. And what we mean is, so-and-so hit a chop, and the other guy took a bump. They're brawling on the floor, and Ronnie Garvin legit chopped Dale Lapey Rouse so hard that Dale was knocked to the floor.
Yeah. I loved it.
The concrete floor. A very violent match. The other great thing here is Dale Lapey Rouse was not close to the worst wrestler on the show, or we'll talk about tonight, actually.
I would say he was close.
He was not the worst.
He wasn't the worst.
But when he was running the ropes, you mentioned the last time we watched Superstars, how Barry Horowitz would shout in fear whenever the other guy did anything, including a reversal and send him into the ropes. He gets switched, and Barry would shout in horror. Dale, when he was whipped into the ropes, would have a look of pure terror on his face, and he'd, from all the way across the ring, he would immediately start reaching for the other ropes, 18 feet away.
At least he knew that he was supposed to hold onto the ropes.
That is correct.
Okay, that's better than some of these idiots.
Yes, that is correct. And he'd run. He was in abject terror the entire time that either the rope would go away or break, or he would get there too late and the rope wouldn't be there anymore. It was, and he's running at the camera every time. It was very funny. JJ joins the announce booth for one comment. I hope everyone at home has a color television set so they can enjoy the welts on Dale Lapey Rouse's chest.
Yeah.
But it was realistic. The point I'm making, it was realistic. Some people had black and white still.
I did like that Barry hit Dale Lapey with a superplex in the squash match.
Yeah.
I bet it's the only superplex Dale ever took in his entire life. Why would you superplex a guy in a squash match on TV?
He did it all the time.
A superplex?
Yeah.
No, not in a squash.
Barry Windham was a superplex. He usually does the lariat superplex claw combo. I guarantee you, like not every match, but 80% of the matches we've watched.
I'll pay better attention next time.
He has done a superplex. It was funny.
There's no way Dale's took another one.
That's true.
That's impossible.
Because Barry, of course, is very tall. Dale is the gangliest motherfucker on the show. And when Barry grabs him in the superplex, he looks up at the lighting rig, and he had a long thought about whether or not he should actually follow through with this.
Yeah, because if his opponent wasn't an idiot, he'd know to like bend his legs or whatever.
Yeah.
So he had to think of two things.
Yeah.
Will I hit the ceiling if I execute this move? And is this fucking moron smart enough to bend his legs if he's going to hit the ceiling?
Finally, he figured hell with it.
Yeah.
And they didn't hit the ceiling. And he tags in Ronnie Garvin. Garvin wins with 2 knockout punches.
Yep.
And then after the match, does the Garvin stomp.
See, this is one of those things that was so great about wrestling back then. Garvin largely wrestles the same as a heel, but there are different things he does.
He's just a dick.
He goes to throw a shirt, but then he doesn't throw it to the people. He beats the shit out of the guy, and he adds a back rake, which he would never do as a babyface, unless you're Hulk Hogan. He hits the knockout punch, but he does not cover him. He must torture him. Hits him with another knockout punch, sits on the guy, and then, just to be a dick, he stomps all over his body for good measure.
Yes.
I love it. I love Ron Garvin. I've loved him every single time I've seen him, except when he was champion.
It was amazing.
It's crazy.
So they do a promo afterwards. It's Ron Garvin, Barry Windham, and J.J. Dillon. And I forgot how great this was until right now. First of all, David Crockett's question for them. Not even a question. He introduces them, Garvin and Windham, as the co-holders of the U.S. title. J.J. Dillon is outraged, dismisses him. How dare you take a cheap shot like that? You are not needed. And he takes the mic and he conducts this interview. Awesome.
You know, I like David Crockett in the sense that he's very, very passionate and enthusiastic.
Yes.
Okay. But I do understand things that people don't like about David. Like, he got booted out here. They booted his ass out. And then right near the end, he comes back and he's as happy as a clam.
Well,
He's got this giant smile. He got kicked out by J.J. Dillon.
He got bullied by big scary men.
He's so happy. I'm like, dude, you should be like pissed or scared, not happy.
Yes. So Dillon conducts this interview. He's an awesome interviewer. He says, this man here, Barry Windham, is the undisputed U.S. champion. This man here, Ronnie Garvin, is the former world heavyweight champion. And David Crockett comes out and takes cheap shots at the two of you. Now, Gary Hart, he says, is a few minutes late. He checks his watch. But we'll sure he'll be joining us soon. Windham says there's no need for Crockett to be out there. He is the undisputed U.S. champ. He calls out Dusty Rhodes. He also calls out Sting. At this point, Gary Hart and Al Perez arrive. Apparently, they were legit a few minutes late. So, Gary starts talking about how he's known Dusty Rhodes and the Rhodes family for a long, long time. And Dillon cuts him off to throw it to the videotape. They run the clip. They're at an arena show somewhere. Gary Hart's doing a promo at ringside. Says Dusty has lost his guts. He's a gutless coward. Ever since they took him out, he's just running his mouth. At this point, Dusty Rhodes attacks him from behind, lays him out with a big elbow, grabs the mic.
You just hear boos as Dusty makes his way out there. There are no cheers. He's booed in an arena show.
Yeah. Tell Ronnie I'm looking for him, he says. He storms off. So we go back to the studio, and yes, David Crockett is back. And by the way, he is again insulting these men, saying they'll attack anyone when it's 2-on-1. And Gary says, listen, when my man Ronnie Garvin laid out Dusty Rhodes at the Great American Bash, he attacked him man to man and eye to eye, which is true. Says Ronnie's got a right hand, a super sock, he says, that Leon Spinks and that fool Mike Tyson have never seen. And they start talking about how you knocked out that 500-pound farmer, Mighty Wilbur. You knocked him out, but you're still friends, right? And Ronnie says, sure, we're friends, but it's about money. He's already saying he will knock out his friends for money. And he starts calling out Dusty Rhodes and telling him to find a partner. There may have been technical difficulties. He may have been bleeped.
I don't know what it was.
It's funnier if he's bleeped.
We tried to figure out what the hell he said, but
Yeah.
he was bleeped out for something.
Al was there this whole time just smiling with his good pecs, and he never said anything.
Yeah, I like JJ. Obviously, Gary Hart is one of my favorites. I do love Gary claiming We don't do our dirty deeds from behind. When Ronnie punched out Dusty, it was man-to-man, eye-to-eye. Mm-hmm. Because for a split second...
It is literally true.
They were looking at each other for one split second as he spun the guy around as he came up from behind like a thief in the night.
But
he's not wrong.
In Gary Hart's eyes, that makes it a fair fight.
He was telling the truth.
Yes.
Yes.
Because heels are bastards. Hypocritical bastards. That's what makes them great. So we go to an arena for
a Midnight Express squash in an arena.
Yes. One of the jobbers was Larry Stevens. I couldn't tell the other guy. So it's confirmed during the squash match, by the way, there will be 8-man tags coming up with the Rock and Roll Express and the Fantastics against the Russians and the Varsity Club. And I was confused at first, and then I remembered there are 2 Russians now. There's Ivan and the Russian assassin. So they do the squash. It is uneventful. They win with a rocket launcher, and then things get good. Cornette and the Midnights are doing a promo at ringside. Cornette's being his usual mouthy self, talking about how great they are. Out comes J.J. Dillon. And for 1 minute, it's basically 2 Eddie Haskells, where they're openly, just incredibly snarkily, over the top, trying to be great friends with each other. Such great pals. I like you, JJ, so much. You're such a great friend. And Cornette says, I'm really looking forward to this match we're going to have with the U.S. Tag Team Champion, Midnight Express, and the World Champions, the Four Horsemen. And JJ says, look, Jimmy, I know you're really excited, but I think this has all gone too far. Cornette says, I don't think it's gone too far, because after we win those belts, we'll still be friends. It's all been fun and games to this point, and then out come Tully and Arn, and the mood changes.
Arn ain't down with this bullshit.
Arn is not putting up with tolerating any of this bullshit. Yes. He tells these guys, listen, be satisfied with what you got. You don't need these belts.
We've shared everything, and I mean everything together.
Right.
Excuse me?
That's what he said. You don't need these belts, he says. And then Stan Lane and the Midnight Express, except for when Stan
never talk.
Except for when Stan first showed up, they never ever talk. But this time Stan is speaking for himself.
It's 2 tellers.
Ah, I see, yes. Well, and a short pen with a tennis racket. So Stan says, we've been great for a long time. It's about time we got the giant payday. Because the world champions make the most money. Tully says, to be a world champion, you got to be a great talker. You got to do a lot of media appearances. You got to be a great talker. Neither you can talk, especially you. And he starts putting his finger in Bob Eaton's chest. And you can tell Tully Blanchard thinks nothing of Stan Lane and Bobby, especially Bobby Eaton. Bobby fires up. Bobby Eaton never speaks.
Never.
He was born a mute, I think, until right this moment. And he just tells Tully to get that finger out of his chest. You better watch yourself. You better watch your mouth. Tully's shouting at him to speak English. So they're going back and forth. It's trouble. Cornette and JJ are finally able to pull them in apart. The last thing Cornette shouts back is, do you remember, JJ? It's hard to beat someone when you never had a match, friend. And they leave. This was beautiful.
This was awesome.
This was fucking beautiful.
I actually like the next segment even better. They go to Flair. David says, a rematch has been signed. Flair will face Luger. I'm like, when? Where? Oh, they don't tell us. Flair says this was done on my terms only. This time could be your last time. But he's so concerned with Luger that he's busy telling all of the women that are coming to the towns that he is now coming to around this country, including Seattle, that if they want a taste of the finer things in life, the Horsemen are coming to town. JJ shows up, and he's out of his mind. He's flustered. Starts talking about catechisms, smart mark remarks by Jim Cornette.
And what he said.
That's what we figured he said. He actually bumbled all over.
Yeah, well, I think he meant to say smart remarks.
Something
and
like
mumbled.
that.
He came out smart and mark remarks, which makes it better.
Yes. So JJ cuts a promo on Jim Cornette. Do you know how much I want to see that fight? Oh, my God. So then Arn gets the mic, and he cuts a promo on Cornette, Arn, and the Midnights.
Yes.
Bobby and Stan. And he says, I took care of both of you. He says, Bobby, I was always your best friend. I took care of you. I brought little girls to your table because you didn't have the sense to ask them yourself. Excuse me?
I don't think he meant children.
Lane then says, or he says about Lane, you've been chasing girls so long, you've become one.
Wow.
He says, Cornette, if you come after me with that sissy tennis racket, we got sissies again here. It's a common theme
It
in
involves Cornette.
80s and 90s. You come here with that sissy tennis racket, I'll stick it where the sun doesn't shine. I'm watching this just thinking, like, I think it was 2 weeks ago. The Midnights and Cornette just randomly, calmly dropped one line about how can you win the world titles if you've never got a shot? It's like one line 2 weeks ago. Then last week, they're discussing it, and they're asking Cornette a little bit more about it. And now it is escalated
Yes.
to full on fire.
They're all pissed.
They are all ready to kill each other now.
Yes.
And there's part of you that thinks, fuck, there's part of me that thinks they went from 0 to 60 in 3 weeks. Like, that seems a little bit rushed. But when you really think about what the situation that happened right here, this should not drag out.
No.
No. Cornette made a fucking remark. You know, the Horsemen got really pissed off about it immediately.
Their feathers got ruffled.
Yep, and they managed to last another week. They took a week to try to calm things down. And when these fucking guys weren't backing down in a week, it's time to fight. And both sides are ready to kick each other's ass. This show is on fire now because of this feud.
Yes. It has actually...
This show has gone from 0 to 60 because this program went from 0 to 60. Who gives a shit about Flair and Luger? I could not possibly care less about those guys. I want to see the fucking Horsemen versus the Midnights.
Yes, and all the fallout that it's affected every other team on the roster, as we shall get to.
I'd rather see JJ and Cornette than Flair and Luger again.
Okay.
Am I wrong?
Actually, no, I watched Luger and Flair.
I saw that first one.
It wasn't very good.
Shit finish.
Yeah.
A bunch of bullshit. Like, they ain't going to do a shit finish in a fucking JJ versus Cornette match. You're going to have a finish.
Very shit match with a good finish.
Yeah, I'll take that.
JJ's actual line, by the way, he says, if you Cornette, if you try to wave that tennis racket around Tully and Arn, they're going to shove it where the sun don't shine unless I get a hold of it first, and I'll shove that skinny end down your throat with a wide end out your mouth. You look like a Watusi warrior.
That's what he said.
Now, before we move on here, and before I forget, I looked up this Seattle card they did because this is the last show before that. It was a joint Jim Crockett Promotions Don Owen show.
Oh, God.
At the Seattle Center Arena, August 3rd, 1988. Here is what we could have seen if we, at age 13, could have gotten a ride to the show. The Avalanche, not Avalanche Adams, who wrestled for Tim Flowers, but PN News, defeated Billy Two Eagles.
PN fucking News was around in 1988.
Yeah.
And Billy Two Eagles
was also around in 1988.
Jesus, God Almighty! You know he once gave me one of his headdresses.
Did he?
Yes, he did. Not like the big giant one.
No, but a little leather.
Some
thing.
little, yeah.
Mike Golden defeated the Grappler via disqualification.
Wow.
Steve Dahl and Scott Peterson, the Southern Rockers, later known as Well Done, defeated Buddy Rose and Colonel De Beers.
Holy smokes! You know how many of these people I knew and was friends with? It's crazy.
A lot of them. And then not so much from this point on. Larry Zbyszko defeated Kendall Windham. The Fantastics defeated the Midnight Express and Jim Cornette in a non-title handicap bunkhouse match.
Excuse me?
That's what it says here. Al Perez defeated the Mighty Wilbur via forfeit.
Okay.
I don't know. You'd think this would be a typo.
I wonder if, like, nowadays, WWE just advertises cards and then they just do whatever the fuck they want. I wonder if they advertise that match and
Wilbur got lost.
Wilbur, like, couldn't get there, and so they're like, well, we fucking advertised it. So, ring the goddamn bell.
Al Perez signed a contract to face the Mighty Wilbur, nobody else.
He's got 10 seconds to get out here,
Yes.
and if he can't find his way to Seattle, he's out.
This next match sounds like a mistake, but it's what's written here, and so I will read it. Sting, teaming with Dick Murdoch, defeated Ivan Koloff and Ron Garvin.
Wow.
That sounds wacky.
Ron Garvin versus Dick Murdoch sounds incredible.
It does, actually. Jimmy Garvin defeated Kevin Sullivan in a taped fist match.
Wow.
Steve Williams fought NWA TV champion Mike Rotundo to a double countout. And in the main event, Lex Luger, Nikita Koloff, and the Road Warriors defeated the Four Horsemen inside a steel cage.
God.
That's what.
Meanwhile, I went to go see The Earthquake versus The Ultimate Warrior. Depressing.
Yeah. And I won't go over the whole card, but they did another show the next night in Las Vegas with 100% different matches.
Yeah, you got to.
I guess so,
People
man.
travel around that loop to fucking... You can't do the same matches.
They did not do the same
business.
matches. They did the Road Warriors and the Russians in a scaffold match.
Oh, my God. They took the fucking scaffold from place to place?
On the road.
Jesus.
So after this awesome promo here with the Four Horsemen and Tully and...
I hope it was like an 8-foot scaffold.
You would like to think on the house show.
Yeah.
Tully and Arn versus Trent Knight and JC Wild.
I'm talking 8 feet from the ground, so if you put the ring up 4 feet, it's like a 4-foot scaffold.
That would be good.
Yeah.
So, JC Wild remains horrible. The only good thing about JC Wild is that he's very skinny, so that when he tries to deadweight guys or just isn't good enough to go up for them...
He was the worst ever, if I recall.
He was he was not the worst on this show or on this night.
But I believe we at one point deemed him the worst ever. JC Wild.
He was worse. Oh, what's the guy's name? He was worse than the guy who was the worst looking wrestler I ever saw.
Yes.
But point is, he's very literal. In a literal sense, he's very light. And so Arn, at one point, Arn had to do a spine buster, and he fucking spine busted this guy, and he planted him, and he shoots Tully a look. Like, what the fuck are we in here with? Eventually, they pin him with the slingshot suplex, which was a shoot slingshot suplex.
Yeah, hell yeah.
Because JC Wild wouldn't go up. Lex comes out for a promo. He says, if this sport was about chasing women, Ric Flair would be champ forever. But Rick, he says, Nature Boy, the women aren't looking at you. They're looking at the bulges in the back of your pants. And there's a pause, and he says, and that's your wallet. Thanks, Lex.
At least you didn't pause after they're looking at your bulges.
There's nothing good.
In the back of your pants.
Nothing good that can be...
Because you're not much to look at.
Yeah. So Flair has made all sorts of outrageous demands for this title match. 4 limousines and a private jet. Lex will fly a commercial and drive himself to the arena and wrestle for free.
God damn, what a mark.
The point is
What the fuck are you doing, Lex?
he's got his match.
This idiot Lex, he came off as such a geek. It's like, I know the world title's important, but he's like, I'd fly commercial, take a cab, drink out of the water fountain, and wrestle the match for free to get my hands on you. I'm like, you need a manager. Like, even if it's a heel.
Your business.
You're a fucking idiot.
Your business sense sucks.
Yeah.
He does have a stip to add, though. He added it so poorly, you were unsure if he said it. But I'm pretty sure...
I was, actually.
I am pretty sure he said the match would not be stopped for blood.
Yeah, he may have mentioned it, or we just knew that.
Sting versus Rick Allen.
So they got to go to a commissioned state so it won't stop it on blood, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Rick Allen is a very muscular man. I think he was bigger than Sting, actually. And Sting hits that Stinger splash. And he goes to roll Rick Allen over. And he grabs the guy's feet. And it's a work. So Rick's supposed to roll over. But maybe Rick Allen was legit knocked cold by the Stinger splash. He did wait some on the rollover. So Sting has to actually roll the guy over to get the scorpion on him. Sting won.
They mentioned that Sting likes the West Coast. They're touring there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's from Venice Beach, they always
He's a
said.
surfer, yeah. Guess you can't surf on the East Coast.
I don't know what to... So Sting cuts a wacky promo. Something about how Barry Windham's father, when he looked at Barry, must have thought there's no way that could have come from my loins. Did I get that right?
He talked about his Barry's father's loins.
Yeah.
That was weird.
And it occurred to me here, watching this promo...
I should have talked about Chris Christopherson's loins last night.
Maybe you need a rematch.
Damn it. If only I'd heard this promo first.
So, it occurred to me watching this wacky Sting promo, and I had a flashback to the wackiest of all wacky Ultimate Warrior promos and Superstars about being a skeleton. And then I remembered these guys were a team. It's a shame, a crying shame, that the Blade Runners didn't last as a team, cutting bizarre, mind-blowing promos every week.
About turning their body into a skeleton?
Yes. And then Sting screams in David Crockett's ear and says, now your eardrum is broken.
And I think it might have been.
Probably was. The Fantastics versus Mike Jackson and Larry Stevens. So the Fantastics whip, I think it was Jackson, but anyway, they whip a guy in, and they do a double running headbutt.
Jackson.
Was it Jackson?
Well, all I know is, like, he did the early part of this match, and it was the best thing on the show.
Sure.
I know we've mentioned this 1,000 times, but All I could think during this was, can you imagine if there was social media in 1988, the fucking backlash that Mike Jackson wasn't getting his due?
That would be interesting.
This guy shouldn't be a jobber. Why isn't he beating Ric Flair for the title? Why isn't he replacing Lex Luger, that big fucking stiff? It should be Mike Jackson in there. Even though Mike Jackson's goddamn fucking job was to try to train these other goofballs for television and come in here and put guys over. People even know why it was called a jobber? You're going in there to do your fucking job. Elevate other stars. We need more Mike Jacksons and less Dale Lappy Rouses.
Well, that's for damn sure.
Fuck.
So they have this double headbutt the Fantastics do, and this leads to a long conversation between the announcers about new moves.
Yeah, there's a lot of new moves.
It's very important for tag teams to do new moves. Maybe you shouldn't do them on TV, they say.
In this decade of the 90s, it's coming.
Where everyone can scout you.
Who only knows what'll happen in the 1990s?
Yes. So,
Future.
Speaking of new moves, the Fantastics won with a standing rocket launcher.
Oh, wow.
Fulton runs the ropes, and he runs into a press slam, and
Yeah, it's
Rogers
stupid.
drops. You're very impressed, I can tell.
Do it off the top. Why would you evolve into a ground-based? You're supposed to evolve to fly.
To keep your opponents off base.
I think
off
birds
balance.
did. Dinosaurs evolved to fly. Birds didn't evolve into a diplodocus. That would be going backwards.
No, they did not.
So there you go.
I confirm what Bryan is saying.
Thank you. So don't do a standing fucking rocket launcher. I'm gonna debut a new move. I'm gonna do a super kick from my knees. It's gonna be my new move. I'm gonna crawl and then super kick the guy.
They did debut the super kick to a guy on his knees.
Yeah.
That did evolve.
Yeah, but that's different.
Oh,
You're not letting the guy get to his feet. You're the attacker.
I see.
Yes, you're killing your prey. You're taking your fucking prey down and killing him. You know what I'm saying? You don't start anyway.
So David Crockett is...
I'm gonna evolve some new tights that only have one leg. Just slide them on like a snake. I'll hop around the ring. Like, why would you do that?
I love how you can always tie, with no correlation, you can always tie one pet peeve into another.
Yeah.
No
While
one
we're on
here,
the subject.
no one in here had one-legged tights. We haven't seen one-legged tights in years.
No, but I'm just making that's the comparison I'm making here. That's how stupid a standing rocket launcher is. It doesn't look as cool. You're not falling from as great a height. You're not doing as much damage to your opponent.
Or yourself. You took a lower risk to beat Larry Stevens.
No, Vinny, you don't get it. In real life, you don't jump off the top rope and land on your elbows and knees on the ring. You land with your whole body weight squishing the guy. It's like jumping on a bouncy castle. His body being the castle.
They had to be sure Larry Stevens wouldn't move, exposing the cold, hard canvas below.
Please, Sean Mooney, get out of here.
So, anyway, David Crockett was so happy to interview the Fantastics afterwards. And boy, these Fantastics are so happy.
Well, I think they were like, you guys got 18 seconds, so go! And they went as fast as they could.
They were so happy to talk about teaming up with the Rock and Roll Express. We've got similar styles, Fulton says. We're not jealous one bit. There are fans of both teams. And they go to Tommy Rogers. He says, the best part about this summer is we've met a lot of great people. We're looking forward to meeting more. I want to say hi to Dusty Hill of ZZ Top. And I can't wait to team with the Rock and Rolls. He says, a lot of things are happening. Teams are turning on each other. It's crazy. And they say, fans, we got to go.
Yep.
Hints being dropped.
Yep.
I don't think it goes anywhere. But had it... Now I'm sad. I want the Rock and Roll Express to stick around, turn heel, and feud with the Fantastics. Because that ties in. Again, this is all happening because the Midnights have challenged the Horsemen. And everyone's... Now, so many doors have been opened. That precedent has been set. And anyone can challenge anyone. It opens a whole new world of opportunities. And they didn't do any of them.
There you go.
There you go.
An excellent show.